転生
The Cursed Shinobi. A Tale in the Percy Jackson World, Part 1. Disclaimer. Don't own PJO or Naruto. And, this is a continuation of the Fearless series found in Olympian one-offs. Lunar Phases. The Cursed Knight, PT-1. Survival. The purpose of the core instincts that reside within the psyche of all life, both immortal and not, was to ensure survival. The animal kingdom's hierarchy, and much of humanity's, was based on those instincts and an organism's effectiveness in utilizing them. It boiled down to a simple point, an unspoken rule of life: those who are unable to survive, don't. This universal law affected everything, from the smallest microbe to the king of Olympus himself. Arguably, if ever pressed by someone who had the stones to ask, Zeus would tell them that was why he kept a careful eye on what was agreed to be his kingdom. His brothers mocked him, called him paranoid, and his children called him cruel, and perhaps he would agree with them if they knew what he did. Zeus was the only child of the Crooked One who saw the active effects their father's rule had on the planet. The resistance had long since begun before he attended that dinner as Kronos' newest jester where he freed his brethren, so his siblings only ever saw the war against the Titans. They never saw the time of Titans. Those horrors he witnessed in his early years were why he was so paranoid, and so cruel. In Zeus' opinion, if they managed to keep the world intact as mortals knew it, it would ensure his family's survival. Granted, there were weaknesses that any sensible ruler would succumb to. Immortality was a blessing, but goodness, it was boring. Zeus hadn't struggled to keep himself busy in his youth, what with the wars and all, but after the giants fell. Meetings, hearings, and boredom. There was a time where he entertained himself by checking those unruly immortals under him if their loyalties dared hint of being swayed to another's rule. The Ned incident, as Poseidon called it, cooled his volatile reign, but it made him aware that threats could easily come from his family as much as his foes. Even checking mortals' cheeky attitudes, like most activities, grew old rather quickly. He stopped throwing bolts at blasphemers in the midst of Jupiter's reign, and as the rule of kings dwindled into archaic standing, he even began to cut back on having demigods. As the mortals' world grew and gods started to fade, Zeus focused on keeping his pantheon relevant and informed. This was where his infidelity came to benefit them as a whole. Despite Hera's grousing, justified or not, his divine children were their best method of keeping them relevant with the ever-changing times. Apollo, ever the loyal archer, acted as his eyes from the sun chariot and made notes of popular culture he deemed relevant. Granted, Zeus could do without the delivery of reports through poem. He damned the Irish for their irritating contribution to his repertoire. Hermes, the sly and sneaky messenger, kept his ears to the ground and developed their first international information ring. Despite their alternative viewpoints, Aphrodite, Athena, and Artemis expanded upon Hermes' groundwork. Dionysus, when he was sober enough, managed to make a grapevine or two through the gallant and jubilant events he would attend. Keeping in line with his domain over fairness and justice, when his bastard children had their worth tested, his recognized offspring fell under the same scrutiny. Hephaestus kept him up to date on mortals' innovations. Zeus positively despised Benjamin Franklin and his damned kite experiment. And Ares, well, he would find the worst slums humanity had to offer, and dug in. For the most part, things ran smoothly and Olympus prevailed well into the 20th century. Then the world wars came. Honestly, it had been brewing for some time. If he were to be honest, Zeus was rather surprised it hadn't happened sooner. Of course, then came that damned oath he was strongarmed into when the next great prophecy came about. Bitterly, he held to it and kept himself away from mortals for nearly 50 years. Then Beryl Grace caught his eye, and everything has been going downhill since. He'd had to turn his poor daughter Talia, who'd been hunted needlessly by her upset uncle, into a pine. The gods' unrest nearly came to a head when his lightning bolt was stolen, and shortly after that was the revelation that Poseidon also broke his oath. The impudent sea spawn even dared suggest the Crooked One would come back. He was a mortal, barely a week of Chiron's teaching under his belt, and he dared to suggest such an impossibility to the king. Of course Zeus disregarded it as hogwash. More the fool he, apparently, because not a year later, the damn boy backed his word with evidence. Admittance of guilt from a traitorous child of Hermes. It was to be war, then. Zeus knew the prophecy drew nearer and so, upon seeing the golden fleece be rested at Talia's pine, ended her time in limbo. He was sure that his daughter, not Poseidon's son, would save Olympus in their time of need. Then Artemis went missing, while hunting a creature that needed to be found. If she remained a prisoner of the Titans, he could count on Apollo no longer acting in Olympus' best interest. Say what you would about his bright son's fleeting fancies, he loved his sister the only way a sibling could. For all of their bickering, for all of their differences, the twins were two halves of a whole. The oracle, cursed as she was, knew this and sent the best she could after his brave huntress, including Talia. The one variable Zeus didn't account for was the inclusion of Artemis' son on this quest. That boy, Zeus grew pensive over the strange clear-sighted boy Artemis had claimed as her own. His sense of justice was undoubtedly influenced by his mother and uncle. Zeus remembered the terror that struck the people of Philadelphia. 2 officers of the law were killed in brutal ways and the last tortured into an admission of guilt. The ripples he made stirred a new conversation among mortals, resembling those that surrounded the original Perseus after he slew Medusa. If the boy's acts continued, he'd be immortalized into legend by folklore. The thought left Olympus KKNG with mixed feelings. While on one hand, it was good to have heroes in the modern era to make others compare him to the original mold, the very mortal they spoke of was not Greek in lineage. He conspired with Egyptians and was involved with Asgardians. He mixed magics and sought aid from fated, and forbidden, gods. He used every tool at his disposal to achieve his goal. The son of Artemis was a dangerous variable on the board, and Zeus knew that he would have to make a decision on the boy's placement in their world before it was made for him. Naruto craned his head up at the sight before him. The Hoover Dam never really seemed so impressive on paper, but to lay his eyes on it himself was a whole other matter. Calling it massive was an understatement. It took him a minute to appreciate the people who put their effort into its construction and upkeep. The Hoover Dam. Pop Percy's murmur drew his, Zoe's, and Bianca's attention. He wasn't aware they were staring, his gaze locked on the construct and green eyes miles away. A concrete arch gravity dam that was built in 1930 and named after President Hoover. Over 727 feet tall, Grover added, his voice at the same tone and volume of the son of Poseidon's. From the base to the roadway crest. It weighs 6.6 million tons, Talia said. And it has over 3/4 cubic yards of concrete in it. Naruto blinked, shocked by the factoids the three just spouted out. He looked at Zoe, who was just as perturbed by it as he was, before looking back at the three. Is it common for demigods to know the history, dimensions and utilized materials of national landmarks? He asked. The three snapped out of their trance and looked at him, then at each other. Annabeth. Percy asked, looking at Talia. She nodded. He looked back up at the dam. Yeah, I miss her too. Well, that answered one question, but raised a whole lot more. His brow furrowed and his lips pursed in thought. They weren't talking about that Annabeth, were they? Don't misunderstand, he knew a girl named Annabeth had gotten kidnapped shortly before Artemis, but the coincidences surely weren't that high. I thought it was called the Boulder Dam. Bianca mumbled, sounding almost confused. Don't get me started. Percy sighed. I asked about it once and Annabeth nearly made my head explode from the information. Yeah, Annie was annoying like that. Going on and on about the damn thing all the time. Talia snorted. Naruto blinked as realization struck. Oh well, that explains why he hadn't seen her at the camp. As unfortunate as the loss of your friend is, we must press on. Zoe said solemnly. Nightshade, we can press on after I get a damn burger or something. Talia shot back, scowling. Percy chuckled and scratched his stomach. Yeah, I want a slice of damn pizza. Ooh, maybe we should take a look at the damn gift shop. Grover suggested. The three started laughing as they walked in, leaving himself and the two hunters behind. Naruto chuckled at their antics before he followed them. What about you, Whiskers? Talia looked back at him with a grin. Don't you want some damn food? Or maybe a damn souvenir? Zoe was glaring at him, he could feel her ire-filled gaze penetrating the back of his head, daring him to contribute to this, admittedly, waste of time. Yes, it was childish, and yes, his mother's life, dare he say even the fate of Olympus, was on the line, but at the same time it was a good source of stress relief. Talia's grin faltered for a moment and Naruto broke his silence. I need to get a damn belt. He pointed at the rag holding his pants up. He tilted his head as another thought occurred to him. Maybe I should put some damn pants on. Laughter rang out from the three campers. I don't get it. Bianca mumbled. She held her stomach when it growled loudly enough for the others to hear it. Excuse me. Talia, Grover and Percy started laughing even harder. Naruto felt a smile tug at his lips and looked at Zoe, who huffed. Fine. She relented. We shall break fast for a half hour, but no longer. Come along, Bianca. Naruto. A blonde brow arched as his elder sister figure singled him out. Why was she singling him out? A feeling of dread crawled up his back when she smirked at him. It was never good when she smirked at him. Don't get captured by any damn Amazons. With her parting shot fired, Zoe left with Bianca in tow. Naruto scowled at her back and crossed his arms before venturing over to the gift shop while the campers tried to get their chuckles under control. He wasn't kidding about getting a new pair of pants. Like most fast food places, the damn burger was chock full of grease and the thick beef was riddled with preservatives that would make any vegetarian turn their nose up at the sight of it. Luckily, Talia never considered herself remotely close to being one. She gorged herself on the $10 sandwich without any thought. Talia, must you really? Even Aries has better table manners. Talia nearly choked on her next bite. Contribution to blasphemy against burgers aside, the annoyance that she felt when she heard Aphrodite speak was insurmountable. She swallowed her next bite and slouched down in her chair, glaring at the paper and plastic tray her combo meal had come in. What will it take to make you go away? All she wanted was to enjoy her damn burger. Was that too much to ask for? Wow, so much vitriol. Is that the sort of gratitude you show the goddess that's helping you? When that goddess is driving me crazy. Yes. Yes it is. Love is crazy, Talia. There she goes again with this stupid nonsense of hers. Talia didn't love Whiskers. She was attracted to him, sure, but that was all because of hormones. What? She took the required sex ed class, she knew the biology behind it. Sure, Whiskers was brave and skilled and occasionally showed some semblance of brainpower that other guys in her age bracket and above lacked, but that was just who he was. It was who he had to be. His mother wouldn't accept him otherwise. Oh, dear. That's almost a rational excuse. It is a rational excuse. Wait, no, that's not what I meant. Talia protested when the goddess started to laugh. You are drowning, dear, floundering in that vast river of Egypt. Just let me help you. That's all I want to do. Talia grumbled, taking an angry bite out of her burger. A tanned pair of fingers snagged one of her French fries. She glared up at their occupant, ready to tear them a new one, and, to her later realized mortification, she stared. Whiskers had both of the stolen fries hanging out of his mouth as he tightened the damn belt around his waist. The hem of a new black Hoover Dam shirt was raised up enough to expose some skin, while his favorite shirt was pulled taut around the axe hanging just over the pocket of what appeared to be painted on weathered jeans. My, would you look at him? Aphrodite sighed, snapping her out of her hormone-driven thought process. Oh, however that sad excuse of a goddess managed to sculpt such fine material out of a mortal, I'll never understand. I see so much potential for heartbreak. Okay, what? No. Was she planning to use Whiskers in her sick games? Talia scowled and felt static dance along her arms. Not happening. Leave him alone. She told Aphrodite. Out of the question. The goddess scoffed. That boy is divine in every sense of the word except for the literal. I wasn't asking. Talia tightened her grip on her burger, noticing a giant glob of ketchup and mustard start to pour out of the back. She should catch it. Part of her burger experience was going to waste. Darling, Aphrodite's far too smug voice tore her away from her burger dilemma. He already dipped his foot in the pool. If need be, I'll be the one to teach him how to swim. The nearby aluminum napkin dispenser suddenly found itself capable of flight through electromagnetic propulsion. Over my dead body. Okay, relax, I won't take another fry. The glare was enough to dissuade me. Mortification filled Talia. Whiskers was watching her, almost warily. He looked tense, like he was about to run. Well, in his defense, you've been glaring at him for about 5 minutes. And you did send that poor defenseless napkin dispenser flying. Not to mention currently you look like you're seconds from what did you call it? Yes, a Mount Zuset moment. Brilliant terminology, by the way. Oh gods. Talia wanted to be a tree again. Life was so much simpler when she was a tree. She didn't have to worry about hormones or boys or blue eyes she was doing it again. Damn it. Talia, are you okay? Whiskers caught her off guard with a simple but loaded question. He didn't look as wary as he was a few minutes ago. That's good, right? Oh, Wait, did he ask her a question? Crap. Talia floundered for words, thankfully no longer gawking like an idiot, but failing horribly to find anything to say. You're worried about Annabeth. We'll get her back. Oh gods no. She wasn't mentally prepared for a heart-to-heart with her friend who is a boy about her kidnapped best friend, especially if she maybe, kind of had a itty-bitty but not really crush on him. Talia was saved from answering, due to the gunfire that suddenly erupted from the damn gift shop. She was pretty sure that was where Percy was. She looked back and, yep, Whiskers was already moving towards the series of boneheads that chased a dark-haired boy down the hall with their machine guns. She groaned, and shoved the last bite of her damn burger into her mouth, before rushing after them. Of course that was where Percy was. At least she got to finish her burger. Naruto's ears were buzzing and the only shapes he could make out were blurry and warped. He felt cold, like when he used to play in the snow with the wolves in Canada. His head throbbed like a rung bell. His neck hurt like when the rodeo bull's horn had caught him through the shin. Oh, that probably meant there was a hole in his neck. That's not good. Naruto. Zoe. What was she doing in Canada? The hunt wasn't allowed to go there. According to his uncle Fred, that was because of some weird rule that popped up after the French-Indian War. Now he was remembering the dumb music his uncle used in an attempt to teach him. He should just sleep it off, worry about it later. Naruto, stay awake. But he felt so tired. The cold would surely go away if he slept for just a bit. He felt his eyes drift shut. Just a few minutes. I said keep thy eyes open. Silly Zoe, surely a little sleep wouldn't hurt. The wolves would wake him if something was wrong. Something pushed on his show, he's awake now. That hurt. Zoe, he won't stop bleeding. Keep pressure on the wound, Bianca. Satyr. Where is that healing magic? Don't play well under this kind of stress. Naruto cried out as more pressure was put on his neck. His head hurt, his neck hurt, and everyone was so loud. You were an absolute idiot. We didn't know it was bulletproof. You didn't know. Well, we know now, don't we? I'm sorry. I didn't think he'd try to save me from being shot. Why was it so cloudy? Wasn't it snowing? No, it was sunny. They were at the Hoover Dam, weren't they? Yeah, he was sitting with Talia, gunshots rang out and he reacted. He and Talia cut the skeleton brigade off. Talia's useful but ugly shield absorbed the bullets and kept them at bay. One grazed his arm, and then the elevator shut. What else happened? He couldn't remember. Why couldn't he remember? Kansu must have done something. And though that would be a rational thought any other day of the week, it didn't seem right. His thoughts were interrupted by more pressure on his wound. Screaming was too exhausting, maybe if he caught just a few winks. Look at me, little brother. Oh, Zoe was using Greek now. That's definitely not a good sign. Look at me, now. Naruto tried to focus, he really did, but her face was so blurry and he was just so tired. Zerk. Warm blood flooded into his mouth and he tasted copper. Ooh, yeah, this was bad. Worse than that time with the rodeo bull, for sure. Why did he ever agree to go to a rodeo? He's never letting Alf talk him into doing anything like that again. Come to think of it, where was Alf anyway? Wasn't he with them at the dam? Or maybe it was his mom. He'd like to see her chariot one more time before he goes to sleep. Thou are useless, satyr. I just want to see mom, Naruto thought as his vision went dark. I just want my mom. I can't, I'm sorry, the satyr's apology fell on muted ears. Then get back. 1 2 3 4, Zoe Nightshade started doing chest compressions. He couldn't die like this. He wasn't susceptible to the prophecy's warning. He wasn't even a demigod. Zoe. Unless thou have an emergency kit in thy hands, do not interrupt, boy. She snarled at the sea spawn and kept her gaze on the blonde under her hands. 14 15 16. Zoe had seen hundreds of hunters fall over her time as lieutenant. Some due to their own poor choices, others due to unforeseen trickery, but most were lost when defending one another from the evils of man. It was never easy, she grieved for their loss every day. She pressed on in their memory, in her duty to Lady Artemis. It was why she was so determined to retrieve her, for if she could not save Lady Artemis from the general, then what purpose was filled by those who gave their lives? 24, 25, 26. Zoe. Bianca was shaking her shoulder. She shoved the younger hunter away. Did she not see the gravity of the situation? Most of the hunt missed the pain in Lady Artemis' eyes for those years while Naruto was missing, but not the lieutenant. She would not see her lady suffer such pain again. She would not save her from the Titan's torment, and then damn her to a worse one. Faintly, Zoe heard the screams of men and the flapping of wings. Then the demigods cried out her name in warning. Metal clashed against metal and thunder rumbled through the sky. She ignored it, focused on her duty to Artemis. 31, 32, 33. Enough, Nightshade. 45, 46, 47. A boot pressed into her side and Zoe found herself moved. I said that's enough, Nightshade. Oh dollar and percent asterisk. She knew that voice. Not her, anyone but her. Zoe looked at her attacker and scowled. Clad in armor typically worn by Norsemen of days long since gone, with pale blue eyes and golden hair, was a mountain of a girl. Her armor had furs of animals she'd not hunted in ages, and draped around her neck was a golden necklace holding a small golden hammer. Gunia. Zoe sneered at the Nordic woman, quickly taking in the dozen other armored girls that had surrounded her quest mates. Their crudely made but blessed iron weapons cut into the demigods' necks and burned the satyr's skin. She unsheathed a silver blade and rose to her feet. Thou interfere with Greek matters, Valkyrie. Leave, and I shall forget this exchange took place. As usual, you're mistaken, Nightshade. The burly gorilla of a girl allowed a massive mallet to slide into her hand and used it to point at her brother's corpse. This one belongs to Valhalla. I'd not thought it possible, but thine jests are worse than Apollo's poetry. Zoe hissed. It is no joke. I have a decree from the Allfather himself. Gunia sneered back, displaying a scroll in her other hand. She took a step forward, blocking the body of Zoe's brother, and brandished her weapon. Unless you wish to test yourself against me again. Thou test my patience, Valkyrie. Her second hunting knife manifested in her open hand. You will move or be moved, simple as that. Take your best shot, Nightshade. Gunia dared, a glimmer of sparks appearing in her eyes. Zoe grit her teeth and tensed. Lady Artemis, hold out for just a mite longer. Some horrid series of sounds rang out from Gunila's hip with a poppy beat, and the only distinguishable word Zoe could make out was, Dota. The Valkyrie's eyes flicked down to the source of the sound, then back up to meet Nightshade's. One golden brow arched. Zoe furrowed her brows, but lowered her blades a fraction. Sighing, the blonde girl lowered her mallet and pulled a cellular telephone from her hip, flipping it open. Yeah. Gunia seemed to listen for a moment before stilling. But, no, but. Are you Sue? I wasn't questioning you, sir. No sir, sir. The call ended and Gunia scowled at the hunter, who smirked back. Did your all-knowing Allfather make another mistake? I will shove those blades down your throat, Nightshade. Gunia glowered. She slipped her warhammer back over her shoulders and looked at her compatriots. They stepped away from the demigods and their wings popped into existence before they took to the air. Gunia looked back at Zoe with a scowl. Next time, Nightshade, stay out of my way or I will end you. Thou are still 1,000 years away from defeating me, Valkyrie, Zoe sneered as she flicked her silver blades away. Fly home like the good little house servant you are. Though fuming, the Norse girl's wings came out and she rose to the sky in a single flap. Zoe spat at the ground and ignored the looks on the others' faces. She hated dealing with the Valkyries. Her jaw clenched when she looked back at where her baby brother lay dead. She approached him and crouched beside his body. I'm sorry, Lady Artemis. She thought, resting a hand on Naruto's chest. I fail. Bah bump. Zoe's eyes snapped open. That couldn't have. What trickery. A bullet grazed the top of her ear. She looked up and saw a speedboat racing towards the dock. Riding within were several men clad in black military gear and holding, what else but, mortal weaponry. Oh, just great. Percy shouted. The mercenaries are back, Bessie, no. Ever astute, that son of Poseidon. Clearly he was evidence of boys, hold on. Who was Bessie? RN. Zoe looked back down at Naruto's face. For a second she thought she'd heard him say something. Dried blood still covered his chin and lips, and his eyes had glossed over. A death rattle then. She'd imagined the run. Naruto. His hand shot up and grabbed her wrist. His glossy eyes refocused before they burned, nay, blazed bright red. Scarlet orbs from the depths of Hades stared into her eyes. The eyes of something primal had replaced her lady's son's cool gaze. Moreover, whatever it was ancient and angry. Ru-ugnh. His words devolved into a pained roar when a bullet struck his side before Zoe found herself shoved away. She recovered in record time and watched helplessly as her little brother in all but blood began to writhe and contort with screams of agony leaving his lips. Red energy bubbled around his marred arm. The flesh beneath it was slowly eaten away to reveal the muscle and bone, before the skin regrew. The energy spread along his shoulders to his neck, covering the wound that was once there. From there it spread across his body like a wildfire, nearly encasing it, before it suddenly snuffed out. Zoe! Get to cover! Bianca cried from a nearby alleyway. Zoe blinked, just realizing she'd been avoiding bullets and firing arrows at the mercenaries while watching Naruto's body writhe and glow like a bloody beacon in the night. She rushed to her young new sister and took cover with her. She looked across the way at Talia, whose shield acted as a better bullet deterrent than the trash cans she was ducked behind. Grover was cradling his arm beside her. One member of their motley crew was missing. Where's Jackson? He shouted for some, Bessie, and dove into the water once the shooting started. Talia called back. Grover's hit. I need some bandages or something. Wonderful, she groused, peeking around the corner to take another shot at the boat. Bianca, check your pack. I'll cover yo. Red movement caught her eye. The child she watched grow under her lady's care rose again, his shoulders slumped and head hanging. Bullets immediately riddled his form, but the strange red energy would cover the wound and fill it, before patching it with new skin. His head craned back as he took a deep breath. Then Naruto let loose a bellowing, primal sound unlike any yell he'd ever made before. The ocean parted from the force of it, and the mercenaries' boat capsized. A gleam of silver caught her eye and she saw the gift from Ares in his hand, with Leto's gift still wrapped around the blade. His treasured gift was pulled off and dropped to the edge of the pier. The axe was brought over his head, both hands gripping the handle. He did not throw the crescent-edged hatchet so much as he launched it like the rocket mortals saw when Buzz Aldrin hijacked Lady Artemis' chariot. Zoe's keen eyes easily made out the clean kill on the yacht floating miles out. The man's head was split like firewood, splattering all those near him with his red blood. Clear targets, she realized. She drew another arrow, stepped out from her cover, and took aim at the men on the yacht. No. Her ears nearly bled from the yell, and looked into the hateful burning eyes of the thing that possessed Naruto's corpse. It bared his teeth at her, canines elongated and many of the omnivorous front teeth sharpened to tiny knives. They're mine. Mine. Zoe held its gaze for a moment before lowering her bow. Naruto's nostrils flared and he turned back to the water, to the men that held his possessor's ire. He crouched down to all fours before making a leap she'd once have deemed impossible by mortals. Was that Whiskers? Talia asked as she stepped out after her while Bianca was tending to the satyr. No. No. The heck do you mean, no? Talia scowled. It sounded like him. And his body is gone. Zoe was the lieutenant of the Hunters of Artemis. She'd seen the dead be reformed by the gods into new forms of life. She'd seen heroes venture to and from Hades. She had seen many things in her long life, but this method of resurrection was something she'd never seen before. Whoever that is not Naruto. Zoe affirmed, before looking at the girl sharply. Prepare yourself to end him if he returns. We will face no more hindrances this night. Kill them all. Kill them all. Kill them all. The mantra repeated maddeningly as what felt like hot vitriol coursed through his veins in place of blood. Naruto had just wanted to see his mom one more time, and that thought, a selfish little desire, stirred something within his soul. A compromise was made with a creature he thought banished. The ultimate barter that he was warned by many immortals not to wager, the lives of others for his own. The lives of the men who tried to kill them for the fox's power. He accepted. They're not men. He told himself as he flattened one man into bone and gore when he landed on the yacht's deck. They're dogs. Just a kid. How the $% did we lose 2 guys in a boat to a kid? One man shouted. Naruto lifted his right hand and his hatchet flew to it, passing through the torso of the speaker. Clicks rang out as they lifted their rifles, but he ignored them in favor of examining his weapon. The silver hatchet was replaced with a jagged and hellish obsidian war axe. The hilt appeared to be warped ashen wood, as if reflecting the corruption of his very soul. Decals resembling monsters he'd slain in his youth were scarred into the metal by the blood of mortal men. Not men. Naruto muttered as he tightened his grip on the hilt. He could smell them. Their fear. It was putrid and foul. Like mange. His eyes scanned over the nervous mercenaries. Dogs. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Who cares? One flipped the safety off of his rifle. Let's just shoo. The trigger-happy one was the first to lose his head. The man beside him was used as a bullet sponge while the guy on the other side suddenly found himself half a man. Chaos ensued. Blood stained the steel railings, while limbs, appendages, and, for one unfortunate soldier of fortune, intestines were scattered about the deck. Naruto hacked and slashed the yacht's occupants down to the last man, and when his rifle clicked empty, Naruto tossed his makeshift shield down. Why you can't? We've got amnesty, legal rights, the mortal whimpered. Naruto saw a familiar fear on his face. It was the same fear that was on the officer's face so many years ago. Mortal fear. Fear of death itself. Please. I can take you to the island. I can take you there. The mortal's eyes grew wider than dinner plates and he scrambled to get away, slipping through the blood and entrails of his fellow mercenaries before backing into the rails around the deck. He pleaded for his life. Arrest me, arrest me. Men, get arrested. Naruto lifted his axe, right hand tight around the hilt, so that it was high above his head. No. No. Plea. The axe fell. Squelch. Naruto breathed heavily as he stared at the corpse in front of him. He felt his blood cool and the haze in his head started to clear. His axe had returned to normal and he took hold of the handle before yanking it out. The body slumped to the side. He wiped the blood off of his axe with the side of his pants and made his way to the control room. At the door he looked back at the carnage he left in his wake. A satisfied deep rumble echoed in the back of his head and Naruto turned back to the interior of the ship. Dogs get put down. Prey. That which nourishes the predator, the prey is typically the weaker of the two types of animal. Humans consider themselves the apex, which is true given their penchant for using tools. Without this gift, however, they would be at a loss. Like Naruto currently was. Words eluded him, as he sat utterly flabbergasted bound by rope and pushed against the far wall of the mercenaries' yacht's cabin. It really was the absolute last scenario to cross his mind when he initially brought the mercenaries' yacht into the San Francisco dock. Well, more so he turned the wheel and hoped the engine would carry him fast enough at the slowest setting. A sailor he was not, but Alf had been sure to instill a basic familiarity of sea craft in him before they parted ways. Regardless, after he docked the yacht and disembarked, he was ambushed. Shocked, stabbed, and shot in either arm with an arrow, he was downed and bound by the questers in record time. The last blow prior to his binding probably hurt his pride most. Grover Underwood forced him to run face first into a wall by way of satyr magic. Truly, Hilary Duff was a sadist of a vocalist if her music could cause such misery. Let me see if I can understand your logic. The bound mortal among the group scowled at his sister. He was still sore from the arrow in his shoulder. Because I came back to life after supposedly being visited by Valkyrie. I'm still not sure what those are exactly, Percy said from where he manned the helm. I mean, are they some sort of harpy variant? Because I think we should upgrade. Jackson, please just steer the boat. Zoe grumbled, pinching the bridge of her nose. The boy muttered under his breath, but did as was told. From where he was tied up, Naruto looked over at the others in the cabin. Talia was leaning against the wall to his left with her arms crossed, the jacket given to her by Aphrodite replaced with a loosely fitting leather jacket she'd appropriated from a locker under the deck, and her foot tapped impatiently on the floor. Her eyes still glimmered with static. Bianca, nearer to Zoe than the campers, rocked uncertainly from one side to the next, doing her best to keep her primed bow aimed at his head. Grover was chowing down on some playing cards beside their 14-year-old helmsman, and Zoe stood between him and them all, right in front of her bound captive. The hunters, Lieutenant leveled him with a flat glare. Thou had died, she said, pointing at him with her index finger. Mortal cardiopulmonary resuscitation had no impact. Whatever overtook you, or still has you in its thrall. It doesn't, he growled. In hindsight, that probably wasn't going to help his argument. Clearly. Zoe agreed with his musing. Damn it. She crossed her arms. It is unlike anything I've ever seen before. That much malice, even Ares could not muster up that much hate in someone. I dunno, Aphrodite probably could. Talia grumbled. Her eye twitched and her hand tightened around her jacket's sleeve. True. Zoe mused, scrutinizing him anew. Probably thinking he'd had some illicit affair. If that were true, why hadn't he been reduced to smoldering ash by the goddess of love's madman on a leash and instead granted a weapon that was, judging by the effect it had on his kills, made of Stygian iron? If that were true, how Naruto could wield it, he wasn't yet sure. Problems for later. A deep rumble whispered in the back of his mind. Zoe, he sighed and looked her in the eyes. Please, believe me. I swear on my birth mother's grave, I'm still me. Zoe pursed her lips. Talia's tapping foot stopped and Bianca's rocking halted. Both girls watched the quest leader intently. None of them spoke, rather it was the satyr who broke the silence. Okay, look, I usually try to avoid being devil's advocate because, satyr, but when he went all rage mode back on the pier, he didn't attack us. That has to count for something, right? Grover asked. It was official, Naruto liked him the most. He was going to convince his mother to sign a napkin or something for this satyr. Maybe even convince her to give him one of her arrows. Physically. Hand it over. By hand. By his hand, if need be. Grover, Talia looked at him with a frown. Are you sure your magic didn't have a delay or something? Ouch. That hurt more than he expected it to. Talia, my magic hadn't even left my pipes before the vow. The winged girls showed up. Still want an explanation on them. Percy, at this point, you should probably let it go. Grover advised. He stepped around Zoe, giving her a wide berth, before kneeling at Naruto's left side. So, you promise you're not gonna go all berserker wild man on us if we untie you, right? Oh my, Helios, Selene, Cthulhu, Primus, grant me patience. He pleaded, looking at the ceiling before looking at the satyr. I swear on the sticks, on the oath of my mother, and on my parents' graves that I will not go, berserker wild man, on you if you untie me. Thunder boomed around them. See, that wasn't so hard. Grover smiled at the others. If he was still possessed he wouldn't have made those oaths. Very well. Bianca, lower your bow. Zoe approached and the satyr backed away. She knelt and cut the ropes that kept him bound. Percy, keep due west, and slow us to 5 knots. The horizon must be at the perfect time for us to enter the garden. Garden. Naruto frowned as he got to his feet and looked out the window. Lightning cracked at the tip of the mountain aisle they approached. He blinked and looked at the others. What did I miss? Well, Bianca willed away her bow and sat down, looking a little green from the sway of the boat. Apparently she did not have her sea legs yet. We found the Ophiuchorus that Lady Artemis was hunting. Come on, guys, her name is Bessie. Percy, he's a boy. Grover sighed. The stubborn son of Poseidon huffed. That's not what she told me. That's the animal that could grant the power to slay gods to whoever killed it, right? Naruto asked, looking at Zoe. Yes. She nodded, still watching him warily. Well, his clothes were still soaked with blood, so he couldn't fault her for that. The Ophiuchorus has been the subject of the general's hunt. We believe him to barter Lady Artemis for it, or if he finds it himself, to make use of her as a hostage and cull Olympus one god at a time. 2 more questions. He crossed his arms. First, who's the general? Atlas. The lieutenant spat the name like it was poison. Joy. He grumbled before rubbing his face. My second question, do you have my shirt? Thou wilt need its magic. Zoe tossed it to him with a huff. Not that its boon had done thee well thus far. Yeah, well, I doubted grandma expected me to get shot in the neck. He looked at Percy. Glad you're okay. Yeah. Where's your jacket? The jacket was the Nemean lion's pelt. I offered it to Dad so he would protect Bessie. Really? Naruto's eyebrows shot to the top of his head. It was impressive that the son of Poseidon managed to slay a beast with impenetrable. He tightened his grip on his shirt. He closed his eyes and turned for the door, before looking at his mother's lieutenant. I need some fresh air. Zoe made him wait for a moment before she nodded. He left the cabin, mind swirling, and braced himself on the stairwell. His arm throbbed and he glanced at it. The Norse runes had rearranged to hide themselves amongst a more modern tattoo sleeve based on, if he remembered right, the story of Hattie and Skull, the wolves that hunted the moon and the sun. The one chasing the sun, Skull, turned its eyes to meet his. Let's chat, boy. No. Naruto pushed on and left the yacht's interior. He needed fresh air. Just be cool. Be cool. Talia thought to herself as she climbed up to the deck that Whiskers had ascended to shortly after he'd been cut loose. You just want to ask him about the Valkyries, that's all. Don't get too angry if he starts acting cute. Not that he has to, no, that he is. Damn it. You are fighting me tooth and nail here, girl. Aphrodite sighed. The sound of faint scraping, suspiciously like a nail file, faintly followed her words. If that jab earlier was anything to go by, I'm going to have to make you work for it at this point. Oh, the horror. Talia rolled her eyes before spotting her target. Of interrogation. And nothing else. Focus. Hey, Whiskers. He didn't acknowledge her. He was leaning on the railing, eyes locked on something in the distance across the waves. His sinfully tight Moon Knight shirt once more covering his frame. Given the amount of blood that was on his souvenir t-shirt, it wasn't too surprising to find he'd switched out for it, and his hair blew softly in the wind. Okay, so he was thinking about something. Fine, he's allowed to do that. Whiskers. Talia asked as she approached. Whiskers whirled around to face her, his hand on the hilt of his axe. She braced, tightening her grip on the mace canister she kept in her new jacket's pocket, and was relieved when he let out a breath. Geez, Talia. He groused and turned back to the water. Don't sneak up on me like that. What was with boys and their need for bravado? I said your name twice. She pointed out. Sorry. He ran a hand over his face and then through his hair. Just, lost in thought. Perfect setup. Talia could just use that and ask him about the Valkyries, any second now. Just say the words. Easy peasy. Okay, what was happening right now? Must I explain everything to you? You're not an emotionless drone, Talia, Aphrodite scoffed. Your hero is in turmoil. The internal conflict he can't work out alone, now's your chance. Help him. I did not ask for your advice. She licked her suddenly dry lips. Yes. Progress. See. She just needed some water or something. What did Hades look like to you? No. What? Damn it, brain, you had one job. I don't think I ever went. What? Both she and Aphrodite were apparently thrown for a loop. I didn't go to the underworld. Before I came back, I woke up in a sewer, Talia. Whiskers stared out at the passing sea. His hands tightened around the railing. A massive, flooded sewer with green, odorless water that went on for miles, but at the end of it was a cage. And in that cage was a fox. A fox. Talia arched her brow. That hardly sounded like something capable of the carnage they found when they boarded the yacht. At least Percy was adept at cleaning things up by now. Must have been handy when he got outhouse duty. Or, wait, was that the reason why he never got outhouse duty? Whiskers, grumble stirred her from her ADHD-riddled thought process. It wasn't, like, a small red fox, he corrected himself. I don't even think it was a fox, I'm talking about something that was easily 5 times the size of an Olympian. Its fur was filthy, and voids surrounded its red eyes and those eyes were more than intelligent. They weren't just angry. They were furious. Whiskers' hands rested atop the railing and balled into fists. He squeezed his eyes shut and grit his teeth. I've never been more afraid of anything in my life than I was of that thing. Geez, and I thought limbo was bad. She snorted. Wrong words apparently, because the glare he leveled on her was nothing short of frigid. Oh, Talia Grace. Aphrodite lamented with a groan. You were doing so well. I was impressed. You think this is funny? He turned to face her and pointed at the deck, the barest remains of flesh and blood residing upon it after Percy did his Aqualad impersonation. Talia, I might have just sold my soul to come back and finish this quest. I have no idea what the hell that thing was, what it could want from me, or where it came from. And I made a deal with it. I have to live with that. And you want to crack jokes. No, I wasn't, that isn't what. Gods, why was talking to him so hard? Ever since he and Apollo picked them up, she'd been unable to keep her composure around him. Aphrodite's little peanut gallery was not helpful. Gods, the whole thing was so frustrating. So he died and came back. Big whoop, so what? She did the same thing. It hit her like a lightning bolt. The circle gets the square. Aphrodite's very unwelcome commentary almost made her lose her cool. So are we done talking now? Fine by me. He pushed off of the railing and started to walk by her. Hey, no. Talia turned and grabbed his arm. He faced her with anger in his eyes and she matched it easily. We're not done talking, you jerk. You died, Whiskers. Yeah, I did. I thought we went over this in the cabin. He huffed. Talia scowled at him. You died. Her hand moved off of his arm and balled into a fist, before she lowered it to her side. She took a deep breath to calm down. Anger wasn't going to help them here. She ducked her head, swallowed her pride, before lifting her head back up and meeting his eyes. And I'm sorry that I made light of it. I shouldn't have said that. Naruto, I've been through it, too. She died. Partially, sure, but it was death all the same. And had been frozen in that state for, gods, 5 years. She still didn't like thinking about it. Oh. His anger rushed out of him like a balloon losing air, shoulders falling just a fraction as the fight left. Part of Talia internally cheered that she won that encounter, but it didn't feel like much of a victory worth celebrating. They stood quietly for a moment. He moved first, turning back to lean against the railing. She didn't, and instead watched him. The way his features were framed by the morning Lee. You are so not invited to this conversation. Ah, spoilsport. Fine. I'll just watch. Happy. Ecstatic. Talia huffed and crossed her arms. Talia. Whisker's voice pulled her out of her bickering with the Lady of Doves. His hands balled into fists and his jaw flexed before he looked at her again. Do you think it always feels so cold? She did her best to ignore the familiar chill that went up her spine. This jacket probably just wasn't as warm as the last one. Or as her original one. Yeah. Talia leaned against the railing beside him. The waves were gentle and the barest hint of the rising sun began to peek over the horizon. She swallowed before speaking again. I really hope not. Me, too. More silence fell. A more peaceful one than the last. No pressure to speak, no weight. Just them, and the ocean. Hey, Talia. What? When's your birthday? December 22nd. Quote. Oh. Yeah. Tomorrow. Solstice. End of Olympus and possibly the world. She crossed her arms. When's yours? October 10th. Talia furrowed her brows. Crap, he had her on months. Unless, were you born in 87? No, 85. He looked at her, a brow arched when she scowled. Why? Damn it. What? You were always older than me. She sighed. He snorted and she thumped his arm. Shut up. I thought the stupid tree thing gave you an edge. Wait, what tree thing? I'm physically 15 years old. Seriously. Seriously. Quote. I just thought you were short. She thumped him again. Jerk. Talia huffed. Magic blows. Tell me about it. He scoffed before going pensive once more. Got any plans to get out of the whole grand prophecy thing? How do? Her eyes narrowed at him. Your uncle told you. Uncle Fred told me, he nodded. She frowned and then sighed. No. I dunno. I guess I'll wing it. Because that's done wonders for you so far. Whiskers smirked. Tree girl. Do not call me that. She shoved him around a half laugh as his smirk grew. A golden eyebrow rose up. You ever gonna stop calling me Whiskers? He asked. She smirked back at him. Never. Then tree girl it is, he affirmed with a nod. She shoved him again, huffed and looked away, trying to will back the heat that threatened to overcome her face when he softly laughed her punishment off. Talia looked back at him in time to see him turn towards her, resting his side on the rail of the yacht deck. So, tree girl, I think I can help you with your grand dilemma. Ah, and now you've got puns. Someone shoot me. Careful, someone just might. She stuck her tongue out at him. His smile dimmed, but a corner of his lips remained pulled back. Seriously, though, I might be able to help. How? Talia gave him a wary frown. You got another contract in your head. No. He pulled a die out of his pocket, the faces marked with a sun and a moon. But, I do have one last favor to cash in. A favor. She choked on her spit. Aphrodite gasped. Jackpot. Shut it. Talia hissed. She eyed the die warily. What kind of favor? A favor from a god of time. Whisker's words hung in the air around them for a good minute. Talia was by no means stupid and easily connected the dots he was laying out for her. I take it back. Aphrodite suddenly whispered. Do not let him do this. So, that means I should definitely let him do this. No. Aphrodite started to sound angry. Good. Talia Grace, don't you dare. You will not accept. Don't do it. Are you sure? She asked, once she could find her voice. He cracked a small smile and Talia could have sworn the sun chariot passed by in that instant. Aphrodite raged in the back of her mind, but she ignored it and focused on Whisker's bright blue eyes. I think you've done enough for Olympus, don't you? Okay, she thought. So, maybe I do have a small crush on Whiskers. In the shadows of the duat, a lone sphere of silver illuminated the night sky. Directly beneath it, seated on a throne, a lone man in fine garments stared into a reflective mirror, where a young man stood on a naval craft. Well, I can't say I've seen this coming. The finely dressed man mused, rubbing his chin. He looked at his rings pensively. You do realize that if you do this, our arrangement is at its end. I do. Very well. A shame, I'd thought we'd have more fun together. He smirked as silver energy wafted from his body. The speaker on the other side hissed and then roared. Carnage erupted in front of him and the man smiled. As it came to a close, another mirror shimmered nearby, drawing his attention. As the figure took up his unimpressed stance in the mirror once more, the man in fine apparel smiled at him. Maybe further down the line we can make a new deal. I have to go. Another client is calling. A pleasure, fanboy. Don't call me that, Kansu. Kansu waved his hand, ending the call, before accepting the next. He pursed his lips at the choppy image and gradually cleared away the interference with his magic. Faintly he could make out the caller's masculine shape. Behind him was a sunrise and water. Figures, he always got such terrible service with international calls. Hello. Kansu. Ah, the god smiled. He knew that voice. It was his favorite avatar to be. Kansu let loose his mana so that the image came in clearly. Naruto. He emoted a bright smile. It's been so long. 3 days at most. The boy grunted. Was it really only 3 days? Huh, mortal time, go figure. The blonde teen crossed his arms. I don't have time to chat. I'm cashing in my last favor. What? No. It was too soon. Kansu frowned, racking his godly mind for a way to keep himself and the boy connected. He'd perhaps acted rashly, sending him to aid his now formal servant against that other being, but something told him those two were bound to meet eventually. He figured there'd be no harm in hastening it. However, if he'd known the boy was going to use his last favor in literally the same week as he'd used the second, he'd have never let them meet in the first place. Actually, something about his wayward avatar to be was off. He looked him over for several milliseconds before he found it. Is that a bullet wound? Kansu was familiar with mortals' weaponry due to his priests and mages' constant struggle against them. If his avatar to be had been injured by one, well, some mortal was in for a very bad night. Not important. The silly boy scowled. Kansu made to protest. Maybe if he offered aid freely his favor would be kept. I need you to age a demigod for me. Was that all? Oh, he'd turn them to bone free of charge. Let me see an image of the target. He smiled, prepared to make use of the concept from Oscar Wilde's famed short novel. Naruto lifted a finger and gestured to someone just past his line of vision. A girl, pretty thing she, stepped up beside him. This is Talia. Odd, that name sounded fam. No, he wasn't really asking. Yes, she's the Talia. Damn it, Naruto. A pleasure to finally meet you, my dear. I've heard so much about you. Such a shame our meeting must come over a call. Kansu charmed the mortal while he inwardly seethed. Destroying a monster of another pantheon in defense of his avatar to be was an allotment granted every few centuries, and he'd stockpiled those for this very reason. He'd have willingly done it free of charge if not for the way it was phrased by the foolish boy, but what Naruto asked for now was tantamount to going against the rule of Ra. That sort of interference with the Greeks and their fatalistic prophecies had to cost a favor or two. Kansu's smile became more genuine. He was filled with pride of his genius as a clever thought settled in his mind. I'd love to, really I would, my boy. But that is the bastard of Olympus King. No offense, darling. He started investigating his nails and ignored the hushed grumbles of the girl. Mortals were always so sensitive about hard truths being thrown in their face. Once she quieted down he played his card. Perhaps we can negotiate. I don't have time to negotiate, Kansu. This is my favor, Naruto said curtly. Rude, but he was used to the boy's mannerisms now. Make her 17, that's all we need. Then I'm afraid I must refuse. Kansu shrugged. He looked at his nails, interest fleeting. Business is a hard and cruel mistress, but you owe me. I beg your pardon. Silver eyes glared at the blonde. You overstep yourself, boy. I owe you nothing. While I was on your last favor, the gall of this mortal brat, hissing and spitting his folly in his face. Artemis had been kidnapped by the Titans. Just like that, the boy's worth showed itself once more. A mortal raised by Olympus, trained by Asgard, and owned by Kansu. He had his foot in every big pond imaginable. Information most would keep close to them would be shared through the mortal willingly. For, what harm could one mortal do? That was why Kansu considered losing him to be too costly. And yet, losing Artemis, or the Greeks as a whole, while catastrophic to the balance of life, was not really his concern. He managed time and business. Not life. 17, you said? He asked after pensive thought. He looked the scowling girl over. It won't give her much of a physical change. Maybe some growth here and there. 17. Naruto cut in firmly. Not a second older. Smart lad, he'd learned. Kansu covered his smirk with his hand and met the boy's eyes. I will do this, but I have a condition. He raised a finger, stopping the predictable protest. I will not only do this request of yours, but I will refund your favor for what was done to the now rust bucket. It will reform, as if never bothered. In turn, you will forgive any instance of my request to you made within the last week. Both instances shall be considered mutual investments, leaving both of us with a favor apiece once more. Do we have a deal? Whiskers, blasted girl, don't ruin this for him. We don't have to use the favor. It's as good as we're gonna get under the time constraint, Talia. It's fine. Naruto, the noble fool he was, pulled through for him. Blue eyes met Kansu's gaze and the blonde nodded. I agree. Kansu practically glowed at the words. His eyes gleamed and shone with the moon's light. Then, by my will, I shall do this for you, my friend. Sucker. Kansu cackled inwardly as he snapped his fingers. The teens blinked and frowned. He rolled his eyes at their silent accusation. I'm a deity of the moon, children. Once the first light of the night's waxing crescent kisses her skin, Talia Grace shall be 17 again. Again. They asked. He deadpanned at them. She was born in the 1980s like you were, Naruto. You both should be 19. Our arrangement was to your benefit. He glanced at the demigod, then back at his avatar to be. Hers, not so much. Tree life is rather dull. Quote. Thank you, Kansu. It was my pleasure, my young friend. Kansu smiled. The mirror's ripple ended and the image left. He reclaimed his seat upon his throne and picked up a single die that rested on a plate beside him. The Egyptian god's smile grew just a tad wider as he looked at the other half of the dice set his human pet carried. My silly little avatar, I will never let you go. Being a prisoner of war sucked, Annabeth Chase often reflected. It was boring and the only meaningful conversations she had, arguably, was when Luke decided to show up. The last time he had was weeks ago. But that wasn't his fault. Like he said, it wasn't his call to leave her literally hanging. Oh, but with this horrid experience came knowledge. She'd definitely be sure to lay out some ground rules when the war started. The first she'd thought of was granting all monsters on the Titan's side one offer of amnesty and forgiveness if they met in conflict. No more and no less, and any refusal was to be met by immediate death. The second, that enemy demigods or other human prisoners wouldn't be bound by iron shackles in a mountain's cavern and watched by carnivorous monsters. Like she was now. Two steel daggers glared at the lone eye of the oversized monster guarding her. This was the sort of creature that gave the Cyclops-like Tyson such a bad rap. The vile thing that almost ate her best friend when she was young. Once Mr. General says you not needed no more, Gump is gonna cook you in a pot. I'm not too bad at cooking. Pretty good at it actually. Why don't you hand me a hammer to tenderize myself with? Annabeth sneered at the Cyclops. It squinted at her before snorting. Mucus adhered on her shoe. Gross. Not gonna trick me, dumb demigod. Gump is smarterest of the Cyclops. Evidently. Annabeth grumbled, flicking her foot around to rid it of the monster's dried snot to no avail. The act loosened her sneaker, and she waited for the Cyclops to make another round before she started pushing it down. Once it hung on her toes and the dim-witted monster approached her, she made her move. With careful aim, she kicked her leg and her shoe flew up into Gump's head, striking him hard in the dome. She cursed. She'd been aiming for his eye. Feisty little meal. The Cyclops chortled as it rubbed his head before he reached out and stroked her cheek with a finger. Annabeth recoiled and swallowed the bile that crept up the back of her throat when the monster's repugnant breath filled her nose. He chuckled and licked his lips. "Soke. Gump likes it when his meal fights back. Then you're gonna love me." Huh. A silver-cowled teen dropped down from above them and stabbed something into the Cyclops' eye. Gump let out an impressive Wilhelm scream as the clearly magical weapon made him dissolve into dust. The teen dropped, back facing her. Percy. Annabeth's smile faltered as the teen turned to her. No. He was too tall. His hood fell as he darted up the hall to look for potential reinforcements. Definitely not her seaweed-brained friend. This guy was too blonde. His eyes were too blue, and while Percy would have approved of it, she wasn't keen on blue eyes. The silver circlet was a bit much too and, was that a Moon Knight shirt? Hold on. Blonde. Check. Blue eyes. Check. Whisker-marked cheeks and Moon Knight memorabilia. Check. Annabeth blinked. Naruto. Hey, Annabeth. Don't move. Her long-lost friend tossed a few silver crescent-shaped shuriken at her shackles and the chains gave way. Weird, she'd always thought that was just movie nonsense. Unless the trajectory and force applied were perfect, gravity. Right. Naruto grunted when he caught her and steadied her on her feet. He rested a hand on her shoulder, scanning her for injuries. You got big and dyed your hair. Naruto arched an eyebrow as he lifted her bangs and she blushed. Evidently, holding up the sky left its mark on her. He snorted. I don't say this often, but white's not a good color for you. Annabeth hugged him tight. You're here. You're really here. No, wait, she could feel a familiar burn in the rim of her eyes. Ah, no, come on, not now. Damn it, Annabeth. You can't cry right now. You're knees deep in enemy territory. Keep it in. Yes. It was working. Ha. Take that, you unbalanced, hormone-influenced chemical reactions. Yes, okay. Naruto chuckled as he returned her hug before pushing her back and smiling at her. I'm here. You're here. We're here. There was a beat before a muffled, if humorous, horn variant of the mildly racist Dixie song came from somewhere nearby before a thunderous boom shook the mountain. Naruto looked up at the ceiling. Judging by the faint General Lee homage, Uncle Fred's here, too. What? Uncle Fred? He's the son of Artemis. Annabeth gaped as she took an offered silver hunting knife, which was terribly well balanced, and looked up at the ceiling before looking back at Naruto. That was Apollo. Yeah, turns out kidnapping his favorite, and only, twin sister puts quite the knot in his toga. Naruto grumbled. He pulled a crescent-headed axe from his belt and nodded at the hallway. He continued, speaking lowly as they walked. If not for the hole, only demigods can challenge a mortal's thing, I'd be up there, too. What? But he, right. Clear-sighted mortal. He was adopted. Annabeth blinked a few times. Hey, if you're adopted by a goddess, doesn't that make you an honorary demigod? It's complicated. He sighed and peered around a corner before he started walking down the hall. Annabeth jogged after him. But, if the gods allow the traditional law of man to influence their own society. Annabeth, Naruto sighed as he tossed a few crescent shuriken down a hallway. Several monsters dissolved so fast, she hadn't time to determine what they were. Do you think Zeus would ever do something to unintentionally risk his rule? Well, ignoring Percy doesn't count. How do you even know about that? She asked, brows furrowing. Naruto smirked at her, but said nothing. Annabeth huffed. You're chattier than I remember. I'm in a good mood. He grunted back, ridding a Scythian Dracone of her slithery leg with a swing of his axe. She flew over him and dissolved into dust before her pole arm clattered on the floor. Come on, Grover's waiting to get you back to the yacht. There's a yacht. It's a long story. One we don't have time for. Okay. That was fair. We're going to meet up with the others, right? Naruto didn't say anything, pressing forward and taking more monsters out with various silver-throwing weaponry. The fact that he didn't voice his answer told her everything. No. Annabeth scowled. No, Naruto, I'm a demigod, too. You're malnourished, sleep-deprived and emotionally vulnerable. That sounded more like the boy Annabeth knew. He looked at her, and she took a wary step back. His pupils were thin as slits and his eyes flicked between red and blue. You're going to the yacht. I'm covering you. End of discussion. But the others have my Uncle Fred and my mom on their side. Naruto held an arm out and caught her when the mountain trembled. Annabeth glared at him and he scowled back. Annie, use your head. Are you in any shape to help the others right now? I hate you. Yeah, get in line. With that he turned back around and continued leading her to a concealed exit. Annabeth frowned and looked up at the ceiling as more thunder raged above them. She hoped everything was going well. Children, a thick accent crooned. Annabeth stilled, her eyes dilating as she tightened the grip on her knife and looked behind her. Crawling along the wall, the manticore approached them. A twisted smile on its Cheshire-like face. Just where is it do you think you're off to? You didn't get the memo. Naruto asked, stepping around in front of her. She'd have been offended if her mind weren't in turmoil at the moment. He brandished his axe in one hand and a few throwing knives in the other. There's apples in the courtyard ripe for the picking. A hunter killed the dragon. What's this? This delectable scent, could it be? The manticore's full attention was on Naruto. It is. Hello, mortal. Hang the next left, then the third left down the hall. Take the second right. At the end of the hall, climb until you see the clouds. Naruto whispered. Annabeth glanced at him and swallowed. Scarlet eyes were locked on the monster approaching them and his whisker-like markings looked thicker. Go. Now. There is no escape from here, child. Your mortal friend will make a delicious snack to gorge myself upon while I hunt you. The manticore snarled at her, giving her pause at the easily backed up threat. It opened its mouth to say more, only for a roar to rip out and shake the cavern. A throwing knife was in its left shoulder. Annie, run. Naruto barked at her before he charged toward the manticore. Annabeth hesitated, stricken by fear of the monster who'd tormented her the most. A quill flew at her, but was knocked off course by a silver throwing knife. She blinked out of her stupor and met Naruto's heated glare. Run. All right. Annabeth turned and flew down the hall. She heard their conflict continue behind her. Your death will be painful, mortal. The manticore roared. Naruto's response confused her. Tried that already. It got boring, so I stood up. The manticore roared and Naruto let out a primal scream as their fight waged on. Annabeth had to get that story out of Grover. But first, she had to get to Grover. Light. The bringer of life. The opposite of darkness. A moral stance. These and more are but a few ways to look at the word. Mortals developed ways to utilize it for their benefit, for in their experience it led to nothing but survival. Clearly, they hadn't nearly been clocked by the speeding form of a bright gold 1969 Dodge Challenger. Talia had, so she could say without a shadow of doubt that Light was hot. Something she knew, but hadn't considered, until after she had to dodge the speeding Dodge that almost caught her off guard. Her new appropriated jacket wasn't as lucky, it caught fire and burnt to a crisp instantly. A fate she would have shared if Bianca hadn't helped her shed the heavy thing. Shame, too, she'd started to like that jacket. Power resonated from the peak of the mountain formerly known as Tamalpias. The twin gods showed no mercy as they fought the titan of endurance. Percy had somehow wound up under the sky, and Bianca was tending to a gravely injured Zoe. As for Talia, well, $and %*. Talia cursed as Luke danced around her spear and managed to nick her arm with his sword. She glared at him while he smirked at her. Her former friend looked at ease with the sword in his hand. Even now, you're so powerless, Talia. He jeered at her before coughing when she twisted and got his side with the end of her spear's shaft. He dodged a bolt of lightning she sent his way, and scowled at her. Just call the Ophiuchorus and we can get back at the gods for everything they did. You always thought you had it so rough, Luke. Like your life was so bad. Talia sneered, ignoring the temptation that he dangled in front of her like some kind of fruit. She locked her spear and shield up against his sword and scowled at him while lightning danced in her eyes. What's wrong? Mommy didn't love you enough. Wow, Luke chuckled sardonically. He kicked her off, rolled over his shoulders, hopped to his feet and brandished his sword in a ready stance. Going for the throat already, huh? I thought we were friends. We were friends. Talia assured as she raised her shield. Her eyes narrowed over the rim and electricity danced across the pole of her spear. Then you tried to poison me. What's a little poison between pals? He asked with a shrug, before he knocked her spear aside with the flat and tried to pierce her exposed side. She captured his blade with the shaft of her spear and the rim of her shield. You sent the manticore to kidnap Annabeth. She twisted and jabbed. He smacked her spear into the dirt and rammed his shoulder into her shield, sending her stumbling away from her primary offensive weapon. The Aegis made good on its name, catching the boy's blade as he dropped it down upon her with an overhead slash. I sent the manticore to capture the children of Hades. Luke snarled as he inched the tip of his sword closer to her face. The announcement knocked her from her game and she had her feet swept out from underneath her. She blocked the following stab with her shield and kicked out at his knee. A sickening crack rang out and he dropped with a cry of pain, resting a hand on the injured joint and granting her time to get back to her feet. Children of Hades. Talia blinked, recalling Bianca's confusion over some basic things. Her unsettling ease with which the bodies that Whiskers, little incident had left in its wake. The figurine she stole and the skeleton's inability to ignore her order. You get it, yet. Luke huffed, standing shakily on his bad knee. He used the ball of his foot to keep from bearing his full weight on it. I didn't want to kidnap Annabeth. But you still did. Yeah, he said softly. He looked at her, almost sadly. I still did. I don't want to fight you, Talia. But you will. Talia frowned. She rolled forward under a swipe to his weakened side, snatched her spear and hopped to her feet. She flicked dirt off of the tip of her spear and readied herself once more. We have to do this now, not because we want to, but because of the stupid decisions you made. Everything I've ever done was for us. For the betterment of demigods everywhere. Luke argued. He narrowed his eyes and raised his sword. If you can't see that, then I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry. She frowned. Annabeth's going to miss you. But you won't. He huffed. That kind of hurts. Deal with it. She narrowed her eyes. I'm still miffed that you poisoned me. Talia rushed at him. Her ability with a spear surpassed his skill with a sword. He tried to catch her shield with the edge of his blade, and she charged lightning through it. He stumbled back, arm limp at his side, before falling to his rear at the edge of the cliff that rimmed the cavern. His other hand went for the hilt of his sword, but Talia kicked it over the edge. That was so uncalled for. Luke grunted when her spear kissed the underside of his jaw, and Talia hesitated. Luke looked up at her, his jaw flexed. Do it already, Talia. You made your choice. Go back to your dad, the triumphant conqueror you always wanted to be. Don't tempt me, Luke. Talia warned, feeling the familiar tingle of sparks lining her eyes. Reason told her to do it. He was her friend once. He was Annabeth's, Grover's and Whisker's, friend. He betrayed all of them. Rebellion protested and won out with the sole argument that gave her pause. It would be a mercy. Like father, like daughter. He sneered, holding his limp arm and shifting his legs under him. Don't you get it? It's the cycle. This pointless, endless cycle they use. You'll get picked off eventually once they think you've run your mark. It might even be tonight. The thought resonated in her. Stirred deep feelings of hurt and anger at the gods that she hadn't faced yet, wasn't ready to face yet. Talia lowered her spear, just a fraction, as she considered walking away. Luke moved, and she reacted on instinct, lashing out with her foot. He was halfway down before the realization of what she did struck her. He hit the ground before she thought to act. A cold chill ran up her spine. My, Aphrodite, who had remained silent through their battle, suddenly crooned in her ear. The plot thickens. Talia slumped to her knees, her spear fell to her side and her shield collapsed soon after. Storms brewed around the immediate area and lightning flashed in the distance. A single thought echoed in her head as she stared at the body below her. She closed her eyes when she felt them burn, and once the rain started, she let her head fall back and screamed into the sky. Anger, fear, hate, misery, pain. All of it came out, and the storm evolved into something unnatural. Naruto slowly dragged his hunting knife's sharp edge along the pelt of the monster in front of him. Skin and flesh parted from meat and bone. It thrashed and roared, but the throwing knives that pinned it in place were dug deep into the wall of Mount Tamalpais. Red eyes glared into green and blue. It's not so fun when the kid can fight back, is it? I will never rest, until I devour your heart. The manticore snarled and then roared when Naruto resumed skinning it. It thrashed its head and its tail's base flicked agitatedly against the axe that had severed its primary weapon. Yes, and one day, I'm sure you will. The blonde hummed as he continued his work. A faint hiss caught his ears and, without looking away, he threw two crescent blades into the shadows at his left. Dracena were hilariously unstealthy for being reptilian-based monsters. With the snake woman slain, if not merely blinded, he resumed ripping apart the durable creature in front of him. What kind of man are you? The manticore sneered. Your friends are likely dead, the goddess will soon follow, yet you waste time on this pointless torture. I hate it when prey gets chatty. Red eyes flicked up to meet the heterochromatic eyes of the monster. I could easily take your tongue and solve that problem, but then, you'd dissolve. Predicaments. Olympus will fall. The manticore sneered through its labored breaths. Your gods will die, and your species will be cattle. Your children will grow to know only fear. The men will be food, and the women will be breeding stock. His left hand grabbed onto the manticore's lower jaw, and he pulled the monster's head down to meet his gaze. I really wanted to give Annie your pelt. I figured she'd make great use of it. He groused. But the longer I let you speak, the longer I let you taint my air with your rancid breath, the more I start to feel that it wouldn't be worth it. You have a shred of sentience, Manticore. Surely, you must have some survival instinct. Why bother? I will return, in due time. The Manticore narrowed its eyes, a glimmer of sadistic glee shining in them. And I will make my next life's goal, to make you watch, as everything you love, is slaughtered like the meat they arurk. He grabbed the monster's tongue, took a tight hold of it, winding it around his wrist and pulling it taut. The manticore sneered at him and tried to close its teeth around his arm, but the other hand still held its jaw open. Cold blue eyes stared back at the creature. When I was a child, he started, my mother used to tell me the stories of a god's temper. How Zeus would cleanse the world again if enraged enough, that Poseidon would flood the planet, or even that Hades would march the dead back upon us. As I grew, I would learn of her misdeeds, of my uncles, and those performed by the rest of her family that were done millennia before I was even a thought in the grand scheme of creation, and for just a moment I was afraid of her. The mortal let out a soft chuckle, before quickly sobering. But I'm not afraid of her anymore, he said, his icy gaze boring into the manticores. I'm not scared of any god. The worst they could do is destroy me. If you think I'm afraid of your threats to those I care about, consider this, I am fearless in the face of the gods and their wrath. So, tell me, monster, why should I even bother remembering you? The manticore's sneer turned into a look of dawning horror. The mortal almost smirked when he saw the fear in its eyes. There was no worse fate than that of being forgotten, and once a monster was forgotten they tended not to come back as often. What's wrong, cat got your tongue? Nothing to say. He allowed the smirk he'd been fighting back to make itself known and shrugged. Oh, well. Maybe next time we meet you'll have an answer for me. Naruto pulled. The organ ripped from the manticore's throat with slow force. The blue-eyed huntsman continued to pull and jerk, painfully shredding the muscle and nerves that kept the monster's organ in place, until finally, it gave. The monster, and its tongue, dissolved before his eyes. Another pleased rumble echoed in the back of Naruto's head and he dusted his hands off before recovering his weaponry. He made his way out of the mountain, but immediately upon exiting had to raise his hands against the hurricane that assaulted him. Blue eyes narrowed and looked up at the top of the mountain. Well, he thought, heading back in and making the ascent through the interior, I've always wondered what fighting an immortal would be like. Artemis was not proud of every action she took in life, but as a goddess she had to stand by her mistakes. The beauty of mortality was that admitting one's faults wouldn't threaten the fabric of reality. Many times, when she felt slighted, she may have appeared to overreact, but her punishments always fit the crime. Overreacting would be to appear before a mortal offender and unleash her divine form in front of them. So yes, Artemis actually considered it merciful to shift boys into girls or jackalopes, or turn men into deer to have them hunted by their own hounds, or to slay a woman's daughters for daring to compare herself against her mother. Okay, that one was mostly Apollo's idea and, honestly, she'd just been keen on getting him out of her hair. Really. It wasn't like she turned those who wronged her into flat-out monsters, or played with the fragile emotions of mortals, or reshaped the land just to get a point across. Artemis was more than happy to spend her days hunting with her hunters and would be all the more for it if the rest of the world just let her be. But right now, at this moment, Artemis was enraged. She was tricked into taking the curse of Atlas. Her lieutenant, eldest companion, loyal confidant, best friend, child in every way but Icor, his very daughter, was dying of a blow that came from the Titan's hand. She made her request to Poseidon's son, and after he accepted it, knew that she had to act fast. Her silver hunting knives were in her hands with hardly a thought, and a moment of thought later, her twin arrived. The flashy style, obnoxious horn, and making use of his obscenely beloved and incredibly dangerous chariot as a weapon was not an act he did on a whim. No, she had needed that distraction to assess everything around her. The demigods, positions, her hunter's injuries and was. Was that her son? What was he doing here? How was he here? He was immortal. He was. Questions for later. Artemis assured herself. She felt her twin step up from behind her. You okay? He asked. She nodded and leveled a steely glare on the Titan as he muscled himself from beneath the chariot. She heard Apollo take a deep breath, his ridiculous pride in his hand-me-down chariot exposing itself just briefly. What's the plan? Close quarters. Cover me. She told her brother as they stood across from her new quarry. That he came to her aid without hesitation showed the severity her absence had left upon the world. His bow appeared in a flash of light and he took aim with 7 arrows already primed. Done. Her twin's golden bowstring pulled taut. The 7 golden arrows he fired burst into 7 more and 7 more again and again and again until a blinding wall of light rained down upon the Titan. Atlas faltered under the attack, and Artemis moved. Her strikes were swift. Her blows were blinding. The damage instilled was devastating. The Letotides were on the verge of victory. Then came the hurricane. Artemis nearly stumbled when the first gale flew into her side. The downpour flooded the land and turned smooth stone into slick mud. Lightning crashed around them and thunder boomed in her ears. Keep on him, sis. Apollo's annoying timbre echoed over the roar of the elements. He took aim once more and fired another barrage, but half of the arrows were felled by the weather's interference. He's already getting back up. Artemis swore and moved in again. Her blades were caught by Atlas' spear. The Titan general smirked down at her. Little moon goddess, he sneered as she struggled against his strength. He pushed her back and her feet slid through the slick mud. Any last requests before I end your miserable excuse of an existence? I am going to spread your sinews across this mountain, Atlas. Artemis broke away and allowed Apollo to get a few close shots in. He darted away and she covered his retreat, catching the blunt side of Atlas' spear with her knife's edge. The brute chuckled. An unreasonable reaction, how completely expected. Say you do manage to do such impossibility, then who will take my burden from the demigod? You. Your twin. Atlas scoffed and knocked her aside. He stalked closer as she quickly recovered. Apollo's attempt to blindside him with a bow over the head, a tactic that surprisingly works quite efficiently on other opponents they've faced, was felled as the Titan caught him by the throat. His spear was stabbed into the ground and her own throat was caught next. The upper air of ether was blocked from their throats as he closed his hands around them. Face it, Olympians, Atlas spat the word in disgust as he lifted them from the ground. Your time has come and gone. The Titan King will rise AGA and $%. Artemis gasped as she hit the ground after the Titan of Endurance let her and her twin go. He clawed at his face, spewing curses that predated even her time on the world, and whirled around wildly. At one point, she caught sight of something in the lacrimal duct of his left eye. Closer inspection when granted the chance revealed it was a silver crescent shuriken. The Titan whirled around, seeking out the cause of this pain, while his unmatched healing and his fingers' size were turned against him. Apollo and she shared a look with one another. You see that? Yes, I did. Any idea how? None, whatsoever. Gonna ground him. Absolutely. They stood and faced the Titan, whose fingers were too massive to grasp the small sliver of silver stuck in his eye. His profane swearing was growing annoying. But, he was in line with his curse. Artemis flicked her gaze to her twin, just as he looked back at her. They smirked at one another. I'll go low, she offered and he nodded. Apollo cracked his neck before he moved to grapple the Titan when he turned away. His arms wound around Atlas, waist-tight like he would one of his mortal trysts. Artemis waited for the perfect opening before she threw herself shoulder first into the back of Atlas' knee. It buckled, and Apollo let out a yell as he made a mighty shove. The Titan stumbled forward, but caught himself on his foot once more. Percy Jackson, give us your burden. Artemis barked at the demigod. Poseidon's demigod, now sporting a streak of white hair, all but flung himself out from under the sky. At the same time, Artemis threw her arms around the Titan's bad leg, spun around and pulled when her brother pushed once more. Atlas fell with an earth-shaking crash where Percy Jackson once knelt, and the Titan's good eye widened when he felt something press against his spine. No! He bellowed as Apollo helped her back to her feet. He struggled and strained, managing to push himself to his hands and knees to face them. The now infamous pose followed soon after and he lifted the weight of the sky from his shoulders. A lone hateful stone-gray eye glared at the twins and they glared right back at him. Olympus will not survive this war. The crooked one will rise again. Titans are the rightful rulers of this world. Geez, what a sore loser. Apollo huffed, crossing his arms. Artemis rolled her eyes. Her twin was the last god in the world who should ever broach that subject, but she'd let him have the moment out of gratitude. The strong gales dwindled to nothing and Atlas' vitriol swiftly became white noise to her as she watched the skies clear. The sun chariot was still parked in the crater it made nearby, and its light parted the clouds. Apollo, you show. Nope. I'm driving. You round up the kids, I'll pick the ride. Her oafish brother lifted his keys and clicked them. The chariot changed from its muscle car shape into a grand golden limousine. Then into a school bus. Then a shuttle bus. Back to a Lamborghini. He looked at her with a sheepish grin. Might be a minute. Artemis sighed and began to take a head count. She started with Percy Jackson, whose eyes fluttered and breathing steadied as the weight of his trial stopped influencing his mortal body. Apollo would have to make sure he hadn't damaged something. Her hunters were the next immediate to check. Artemis walked over to Bianca, who sniffed back tears over the fallen form of Zoe. Artemis knelt down and took her hold of her oldest, loyalist friend's hand. Dark eyes cracked open and a bitter smile graced her face. Her gaze was lost to something far beyond what Artemis could see. Stars. She whispered so happily it almost broke Artemis' immortal heart. I can see the stars again, milady. They're so beautiful. All for you, my friend. Artemis smiled sadly as she stroked Zoe's hand with her thumb. She closed her eyes and took hold of Zoe's mortal form, captured it in her memory. She covered it with her power and watched the girl shift and change as she peacefully expired. A constellation appeared above them, one that would not show until the sun's light fell, but Artemis would see in her mind's eye for the rest of her days. Hunt forevermore in the great night sky, O huntress mine. I tried, Lady Artemis, Bianca sniffled. I tried. I know, Bianca. Artemis pulled the younger girl into a tight hug and allowed her time of mourning. She rubbed the young girl's shoulder and let her cry. Silver eyes fell closed and she allowed one solitary tear to fall. I know. So, that's it then. Naruto peered down toward the base of the mountain, the morning mists hiding the ground from him. His evasion of detection wouldn't last long. His mother and Bianca were distracted by their grief, a grief he'd share when the time came, and Uncle Fred was apologizing profusely to his ever-shifting car. Percy was winded from his ordeal, and Annabeth and Grover were still waiting for them at the yacht. He rubbed his face, he hadn't a clue how they were going to explain this to Annabeth. Yeah. Blue eyes glanced down at his side to the girl that hugged her knees and hid her face in them. He sent one final look down to the bottom of Mount Tamalpais. There was nothing more he could do for Luke, but he still had another friend he could help. He knelt down beside Talia and put a hand on her shoulder. Hey. He wasn't sure why he spoke softly. The others were far too distracted to pay them any mind. Those self-conscious thoughts all fell away when a single blue eye peeked up at him. It was rimmed red. Naruto hesitated before he started to rub her shoulder. I don't blame you, Talia. Annie won't blame you, either. I know that. Talia spoke just as softly. He heard her breath hitch, but didn't comment on it. But he was still. Our friend. Naruto finished, and she nodded. He understood. He empathized with her. He'd never really understand what she was going through. His heart went out to her, and his strength would be there for her if she needed someone to help her rise above this. He sat beside her and moved his arm over her shoulders, tucking her head under his in a tight hug. He's gone, and it's gonna hurt for a long time. She rubbed her arm along her eyes, groaning as she did, before resting her head back on his shoulder. I just want it all to stop, Whiskers. Don't we all? He mumbled. They sat comfortably for a minute longer before Naruto closed his eyes. Time to ask. Think that you tell me what happened. Do I have to? We have to tell Annabeth somehow. Oh, gods. She swallowed and went quiet. He waited for her to speak. It took another beat before she asked, think your sandy friend could turn me into a tree again? Doubt it. Talia groaned. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. I beat him in a fight, she started. He wasn't surprised thus far. Blew out his knee and then electrocuted his arm. I had him dead to rights, my spear pushed into his neck. But you hesitated. Yeah. Because it was Luke. Quote. Yeah. He made a move, something that set off your instincts, and you reacted. Talia closed her eyes and nodded. Naruto took another breath and stared over the horizon. A split-second reaction like that. Accidental on Talia's part, but Luke's was borderline drastic, if not suicidal. Yes, she bested him in a fight, but to have him suddenly try something afterwards. Any demigod hell, even most mortals would react the same way. You'll get through this, tree girl. He rubbed her arm. I'll be with you every step of the way. Promise. She held her hand up, ring and pinky fingers up. It was a test they developed a long time ago after a run-in with a shapeshifter that had a penchant for mischief. He locked his free hands ring and pinky fingers around hers, and gave her a small half-smile. Promise of a lifetime. Stepping onto Olympus for the first time was breathtaking. She knew it was glamorously decorated for the coming solstice party, but Talia couldn't imagine anywhere else looking half as amazing. Spirits and minor gods were frolicking in the main hall. They whispered and stared at the demigods as they completed their quest. Artemis had been rescued. Pardon us. Hot shots coming through. Move gods, we have a meeting to get to. Apollo swiftly and oh so subtly parted the gawking crowd as he led them to the council chambers of Olympus. As they came to the council doors, he rested his hand on one and looked back at them. Ready for a hero's welcome. Apollo. Artemis pinched the bridge of her nose. Just open the damn doors. All right. Killjoy. He huffed before gently pushing on the door, and having both swing open. Now for our next trick. Apollo and Artemis flashed away, reappearing on their thrones in forms that were easily 10 feet tall. Apollo looked around and then pouted at the man in a pinstripe suit sitting in the very center of the chambers atop a golden throne. Did you really have to? You're 7 minutes late. The man rumbled, his voice reverberated through the chamber, and his eyes filled with lightning, cowing the playful god of the sun into silence. Talia couldn't help herself, she stared. It was him, the cause of all of her misery, of her brother's demise, and that woman's insanity. It was her father. Zeus. Discussion began shortly after Artemis was welcomed back, but Talia ignored them and focused on him. The gods' voices became muted, background noise. He was imposing, not even counting his height, but his very frame exuded the feeling of power. His beard reminded her of a dark storm cloud and his eyes were just like hers. His brow had creases in it and his scowl could be seen clearly even through his thick beard. Did she look like that when she scowled? How did she even have friends? Then it is decided. Zeus' voice snapped Talia from her thoughts. The Ophiuchorus will be kept on Olympus under careful eye. Hephaestus, begin making a container for it. Talia glanced around and almost jumped at the bathtub that had suddenly appeared beside Percy. The Ophiuchorus, Bessie, was enjoying chin scratches from the boy. She leaned over to Whiskers, who hadn't left her side since they got there. How long has that been there? 3 minutes. 4 tops. They've been talking for a while. Whiskers murmured back, his hands still resting at his side. He glanced at her out of the corner of his eyes and their gazes locked. A single question was asked of her, ready? Talia nodded. He looked back up and Talia followed his gaze. Her heart leapt in her throat. Zeus, Poseidon and Hades were staring at her. Her father regarded her with a blank, neutral stare. She couldn't read him, other than while he stared at her she was not being looked at with ire. Maybe it was warm. It was hard to say. Poseidon was definitely Percy's father, they were practically clones, only Percy had more of a kelp-headed quality to him that Poseidon lacked. The king of the seas held his trident proudly and gave her the same smile that a stranger on a beach would when walking by. Definitely more laid back than the easily raged god he was made out to be. The last of the brothers, who she expected to be seething outright that she still lived, seemed indifferent. Hades looked more annoyed, maybe, but he wasn't angry. He wasn't blazing with unholy fire as that Disney film had prepared her for. If you want that, look at Hera. Aphrodite's quick whisper drew Talia's attention to her step-godmother. An error had been made. Hera looked spectacular. Her beauty rivaled the annoying goddess that infiltrated her mind. Cascading hair decorated with a fine crown and jewelry, sharp features that models across the world strived to emulate. It was her eyes that really set off every danger sense in her body, that gaze was nothing short of controlled fury. She looked ready to lash out if Talia so much as sneezed wrong. This was the goddess that her father cheated on regularly. What is he, an idiot? Talia thought, a little upset on Hera's behalf. No, she wasn't keen on being glared at, but she understood where the goddess was coming from. That woman hardly compared, in Talia's opinion. Talia. Grover coughed as he elbowed her and tore her attention away from the queen. She frowned at him and he bit his lip before shrugging. You're, sparkly. What? Talia looked herself over. No lightning was dancing on her skin, and she didn't feel that charge in the air weight. Her eyes narrowed and she peered at her arm, twisting it slowly in the light and quote. Why am I covered in glitter? The question was directed at the only one who might have an idea. I'm so smote before this night is done. Whiskers grumbled to himself. She glared at him. Answer my question. I dunno, he's got a sick sense of humor. Whiskers snapped back before looking at Artemis. Lady Artemis, are you able to direct some moonlight onto Talia? Rather than answer the request, Artemis narrowed her eyes. What did you do? He hesitated and looked at her with worry in his eyes, before looking back at his mother. He took a deep breath before he spoke again. I used a favor from Khonsu to prevent Talia from becoming the demigod mentioned in the grand prophecy. Lightning crashed in the skies outside. What did you do to my demigod, mortal? Zeus bellowed as he rose from his throne. Talia wasn't sure if he was acting this way out of some sort of parental love, or out of pride. Either way, Whiskers stared him down, his jaw set. Your Majesty, I ensured that Talia will turn 17 the instant the moon's light falls on her. You dared to use Egyptian magic on my demigod. Lightning gathered in the god's eyes. And $%. Talia looked between the gods. Artemis' grip on her throne was tight and Apollo's looked no better, both looked ready to intervene at a moment's notice. Aphrodite was scowling at the king, and Hera likewise was frowning. Hephaestus, Hermes, Demeter and Dionysus seemed indifferent. Ares was grinning at the ensuing chaos, while Athena was staring at her. Zeus. Poseidon's voice, like a wave crashing against a cliff, was one of warning. You endanger my son with your temper. And my daughter. Hades' cool voice sent a shiver up Talia's spine. She flicked her gaze to Bianca, who stood on Whiskers' other side. He drummed his fingers on his obsidian throne when the king sent him a furious stare. Why bother hiding it? She's a hunter now. You risk the ire of 2 Olympians if you destroy her. Quote. Wow, thanks dad. Bianca muttered under her breath. Hades' eyes flicked to her and she jumped, before he huffed and glowered at Artemis. Talia sympathized with the younger girl. You too, Hades. Poseidon's look at his brother was more of surprise than anger. Long before the agreement was made. She and her brother resided in the Lotus Hotel after our benevolent king, Hades sneered with a glare aimed at his brother. Killed their mother. What? Bianca hardly managed to get the word out, staring at Zeus in horror. Whiskers looked down at her and rested a hand on her shoulder. She looked at him, he shook his head, and she looked down. Whiskers' hand fell and he looked back at Zeus. Lord Zeus, he said, stepping forward and out of their lineup. Zeus' furious glare fell on him, but he remained standing. My interference was done to aid your daughter, to make up when I failed to do so prior. That cheeky bastard. He was lying. That's N. Talia, shut up. Aphrodite's silent command cut her protest off. She glared at the goddess from the corner of her eyes, watching her as she started to file her nails. This meeting is almost over. Just remain quiet. If your words are true, Athena's contemplative voice drew the room's attention. Then there remains only 2 demigods who are threats to Olympus. Nico D'Angelo has already been recovered from Camp Half-Blood and resides under my protection. Hades interjected. He smirked at Zeus. Clearly, I shan't trust you to watch him grow while you show such paranoia. Sneaky, brother, the king sneered, and the god of the underworld gave a humble shrug. I'd not think you're so brazen to show such care for your bastards. On that topic, I would like to make a point myself. Poseidon calmly rose from his throne and matched Zeus's height. He leaned in until their noses were inches from touching. If you so much as harm a single hair on my demigod's head, I will send word across my kingdom, Olympus falls. You dare. Zeus snarled while the rest of the council stared in shock. Poseidon held a finger up, and twitched it once. Pressure. So much pressure. Talia felt like she was being squeezed by the power in the air. This is a promise, not a threat. If any untoward harm shall come to Percy Jackson by you, Poseidon paused to look at the other Olympians, then Hades, who matched his gaze evenly. Or anyone else here, then it will not be one front you fight on. He met Zeus' eyes once more. Are we understood, brother? Quote. You've made your position clear. Zeus rumbled. Poseidon nodded and reclaimed his throne. Zeus took a breath before he did the same. He glanced down at the mortal, a storm of emotions played across his face, before he looked at Artemis. Direct the moonlight, Artemis. Let us see if your son's words ring true. Artemis' eyes narrowed before she looked at Whiskers. He nodded and she glanced at Talia. Their eyes met, and Artemis gained a silver glow. Talia let out a grunt of discomfort as she felt her body grow. It wasn't by much and didn't last long, but it happened all the same. There was a soft tear of fabric and, with a quick glance, she was relieved to find nothing had fallen off. As expected of the Egyptians, so tasteless. Aphrodite huffed aloud and snapped her fingers. Talia blanched as a pink light flashed around her. Looking down, yep. The stupid jacket was back, and her ruined clothes had been replaced with identical ones that fit. Whoa. I feel so clean. Percy mumbled beside her. Talia looked at him and scowled. He was wearing a fresh new camp t-shirt and clean dark jeans. Other than that, his appearance remained the same. Lucky bastard. I love it. Annabeth's grumbling had her look at the girl. Her hair was pulled free from her traditional ponytail, and the grime and dirt had been cleaned from her person. Her camp shirt and jeans had been replaced by an elegant blue dress like one would see at a movie premiere. Talia wanted to laugh at the frustrated look on her face, but refrained. That very well could have been her. And don't you forget it. Aphrodite warned with an audible smirk. Although, the smirk she wore on her face at the moment was aimed at another. Aphrodite. Artemis, growl drew the eyes of the room and mid-turn, Talia saw why Aphrodite was smirking. Bianca was left untouched, but Whiskers' clothes had been completely swapped. His damn pants and damn belt were replaced with new light Levi's that probably fit his form perfectly, and the tip of a dark leather belt poked out from the hem of his shirt. An acid-stained denim jacket was worn over the Moon Knight shirt, which was partially tucked in. His hair was trimmed along the sides, giving more emphasis to the circlet around his head, and in the helix of his ear was a silver ear cuff that bore an inscription of an axe. Whiskers, eyes were closed and his arms were crossed. His jaw flexed and his left eyebrow twitched. Clearly, he was just as thrilled to have his clothes jacked as she and Annabeth were. There we are. All set for the evening. Aphrodite smiled at the council, who stared at her. What? We're essentially done here, aren't we? Talia Grace is too old now, Bianca D'Angelo is a hunter, and we've all heard what Hades and Poseidon said. Is there anything else? The Titans. We could talk about them. Ares pointed out. He scowled back at the goddess, frown. What? They just kidnapped the Cu huntress. We should sack their place while their general is down. They would expect it and be able to rout any attacking force we send there now. Athena refuted with a scoff. As usual, you think of the immediate battle, and not the entire war. Listen here, you smug. The solstice meeting is not the time nor place to discuss this. Zeus declared, looking at the god of war pointedly. Ares threw his arm up in disbelief and slumped in his throne. The king looked over at Athena. We will set aside time in the next meeting to determine strategy. Tonight, we will celebrate the end of the year. And with that, I shall make my leave. Hades stood, his throne vanishing behind him as he did. He glanced at Bianca and gave her a nod before looking at Artemis. I leave my daughter with you, Artemis. Your approval is unnecessary, but welcome. Artemis muttered, her lip curling the longer she stared at him. The god of the underworld smirked before he slowly disappeared. The throne room was quiet, the gods patient. Did he leave? Bianca asked. Boo. Hades reappeared behind Apollo, who jumped in his throne. He smirked, not at the startled god, but at the demigods, who were holding their chests. He glanced back at the fuming Zeus and the scowling Poseidon. Happy solstice, brothers. Sisters. If you'll excuse me, I have a wife to entertain and a son to corral. He left with a dark chuckle. So glad he's in such a good mood. I hate it when he does that. Apollo grumbled, slumping in his throne. Talia agreed, still frowning from being caught off guard so swiftly. And Annabeth's hat let her do the same thing. She'd have to put a bell on the girl. The god of light started to rise. Well, since we're done, I have a playlist to set up. There is one matter I wanted to bring up once he left. Artemis interjected. She glared at her brother when he whined at her. It will take only 5 minutes at most. Fine. The sunny twin slumped back in his seat and crossed his arms. Artemis looked over at Zeus. I wish to induct my son, Naruto, as a member of the hunt. Silence. Doesn't he have to be a girl? Percy whispered to Annabeth. She looked at him and shrugged. That's what I always thought. Okay, so he'll be a she. Dionysus rolled his eyes. Are we done now? I have drinks to Sam prepare. I will be inducting my son, Dionysus. Artemis clarified once more. She scowled at her smirking twin. I'd already tried to go that route once. Best wager ever. You're welcome by the way, Apollo said, looking at Whiskers, who stared impassively back at him. Yes. You've saved us all so much trouble by winning a bet that would ensure mother didn't change me into a girl. Whiskers drawled. Thank you, uncle. Anytime, Lil, nephew. Anytime. What wager was this? Zeus asked, frowning. October of 92. Hermes answered. He was looking at his watch. Upon losing, Artemis would swear on the sticks to not change the kid into a girl, and if he lost, Apollo would forego making demigods for a whole year. And what was the subject of the bet that caused him to make such a ridiculous wager? Poseidon asked, the other gods staring at the smirking sun god in disbelief. Talia was among their number. Cabin 7 had the most campers assigned to it out of the whole camp. How was Apollo sure he hadn't needed to keep it in his pants for a year? The best birthday gift. Lil, nephew was turning 5. I got it right. Apollo chuckled. Talia looked at Whiskers, who still looked indifferent, if not a little confused on the subject matter. And Demeter pressed. My lil nephew was so cute, all he wanted that year was a comic book about a superhero that fought for the moon. Apollo smirked at his twin. Your ignorance to pop culture was your downfall. You rigged the bet. Artemis growled at her twin, eyes glowing. You cheated. You always cheat. We've gone over this. I'm the god of prophecy, Apollo said, waving her off. Precognition over mortals' actions is pretty much in the definition, and he had been reading Michelle's Spider-Man comics for a while at the time. Should have never let him read about Kurt Connors. Artemis frowned. He had nightmares for months. A soft groan emitted from Whiskers, and Talia smirked at his grimace. She was going to use that against him later. That might explain why he had a thing against lizards, and why he kept glaring at Layden. So why not turn him into a girl temporarily and have him take the oath then? Percy asked. Whiskers looked at him sharply and he shrugged. Sorry. The next time we meet in combat, you're going to wish you still had that jacket. Whiskers' flat delivery left Percy with a pale look on his face. Talia snorted. Percy totally deserved that. What kind of dumb suggestion was that? Besides, the oath will not work that way. Poseidon mumbled, drumming his fingers on the throne. He looked at Percy with a gentle smile. It must be a female that is inducted under the protections. A male, a mortal, requires approval from the god who oversees them. Wait, Annabeth said, looking at the king of Olympus. That means she needs my approval. Zeus hummed. He looked at Whiskers, noticeably sparking in his eyes as he did, and then at Artemis. No. No. Artemis frowned. Apollo also looked taken aback. Need I repeat myself? He challenged. He leaned forward on his throne. The last men who joined your hunt, how long did they last? Artemis was silent. Exactly. Furthermore, I declared previously that this mortal was not to step foot on Olympus again. Zeus rose from his throne once more. On top of dismissing my previous decree, he has exposed demigods to Egyptian magic and to the existence of others. Your connection to him, and his role in retrieving you, is all that stays my hand from smiting him here and now. Artemis, jaw flexed but she nodded. Zeus huffed before he looked at the other Olympians. Let it be known that after this night is over, the mortal son of Artemis will never be welcomed back on Olympus, and is henceforth barred from stepping foot in Camp Half-Blood. Talia felt the wind leave her as if she'd been punched in the gut. She looked worriedly at Whiskers, whose eyes were wide as he stared at Zeus. Forbidden from Olympus. Barred from camp. What? Well done, Talia Grace, well done. You've successfully ruined any chance he had of being safe from me. Aphrodite's cool voice had her turn to glare at the goddess, who was meeting her stare evenly and with a small smile. Her eyes flashed dangerously. I told you not to accept the deal. You reap what you sow, darling. This winter solstice meeting is adjourned, Zeus boomed, his voice taking on a lighter tone. Let the festivities commence. Time. It crawls for those who watch it and springs ahead on the unwary. It was a chaotic order, an abstract concept turned concrete fact. Time was a measurement and an element all on its own. Mortals, for all their wishes, could not wield its power and few immortals were able to manage it. The Greek pantheon had a pseudo-god of time, which was actually a moniker for the father of titans, so his mention or invocation was often ignored by Olympus. Often the concept of time when applied to mortals brought the Olympians great frustration. December 23, 2007. The night prior was festive and fun for all on Olympus, save a select few. Apollo had masked his disappointment and disapproval well from his fellow gods, and kept the masses from harassing Artemis. She, her son and her hunters excluded themselves to her temple for a good portion of the night, likely to grieve their lost sister. The demigods, likewise, remained clustered together. Talia Grace and Annabeth Chase took playful jabs at one another's makeover while Percy Jackson and the brave satyr Grover Underwood made conversation with partygoers. When the time came for the demigods to return to camp, Artemis volunteered to take her rescuers back. She entrusted her son to her twin, along with a sternly worded warning should he somehow misplace the boy again, and, after a quiet moment between mother and son and a friendly exchange with the demigods, not to mention the slightly lingering hug between his lil nephew and the daughter of Zeus, they left. Apollo kept him along at his side for the remainder of the evening until it came time for his ride in the chariot to start. After setting course for the standard flight path, the god took his mortal nephew to a small cafe in Times Square for breakfast, one he and Hermes often frequented whenever their daily paths would cross. He spoke through most of their meal, an easy feat given that all he ordered was a black cup of coffee, and watched the boy across from him. You just had to make a deal with an Egyptian. Apollo lamented for the upteenth time and scowled at the advertisements for coke that Dionysus had been pushing through his departments. Couldn't have been one of the minor gods like Janus, Hymen, or Maias. For the last time, Uncle Fred, the whiskered teen beside him sighed. Kansu approached me. And you shouldn't have acknowledged him. The god snapped. A golden brow arched on the youth's face, significantly showing off his unimpressed look at the god's anger, a reaction similar to what his twin would do. The thought made Apollo cool off and he rubbed his hand over his face, slouching in his seat. Sorry, if I'd known you were going to, I hate the limitations set upon my domain. It's such $** and percent. Uncle, Naruto drawled. I was banished from the camp in Olympus. Not interactions. Yet. That's the keyword. Yet. Apollo scoffed. All the big guy has to do is find you and Talia Grace canoodling in a Camaro. We're friends, uncle. The boy cut him off with a roll of his eyes. Apollo scoffed at his words. The tension between his nephew and Zeus' latest little girl was higher than the tension between Athena and Poseidon. Naruto finished the last bite of the eggs Benedict he'd ordered and pointed at the god with the fork. Besides, neither of us even owns a Camaro. You mean, neither of you own a Camaro yet? Apollo grinned. He just had a brilliant idea, one that gave him a glimpse into a few possible futures, all of which would make him beam with pride. A second jumpstart to the boy's hormones was all he needed to get him on the track of truth and righteousness. Come to think of it, you're overdue for a 16th birthday present. What say we swing by a used car lot, and... No, thanks. The god scowled at the dismissal. Naruto propped his head up in his hand. The other lifted and ticked off a finger. 1. Most muscle cars are gas-guzzling monstrosities that aren't doing the planet any favors. 2. I don't have a driver's permit, let alone a license. Well, that's easily fixed. The god snapped his fingers and a plastic ID card depicting the teen's face in a cold stare appeared in front of him. You're welcome. I'm not using this. Naruto, I am a god giving you a gift. Accept it. He ordered, before grinning. Besides, I already know you will use it, because I've seen it happen. For what? Getting a ticket. Spoilers. The face he received from the boy was far too unamused for his liking. Relax, I've taught you just fine, you should pass any test. Apollo then shrugged and interlaced his hands behind his head. Or if you really want to, you could just go without. Look at me, I've been driving for millennia. No license necessary. It's a miracle the world hasn't gone up in flames yet. You joke, but seriously kid, I'm the best driver on Olympus. Apollo leaned back and crossed his arms, frowning in thought. Hermes only has me beat in official marks because I'm not allowed to use my actual ride in our races. That, and I'm pretty sure he always gets Hephaestus to mess with my backups. Naruto mumbled as his attention shifted. His eyes were drifting towards a raucous group of teens near his age. Though hopeful that it was for a reason his twin wouldn't approve of, Apollo watched with an increasing feeling of dread as the teen's emotive blue eyes started to harden and grow cold. For a split second he thought he saw a brief flash of red. He chanced a glance at the group and, oh, and $%*. They were harassing the waitress. Don't Eve, $* and dollar. Apollo turned back to find the seat across from him empty. He scowled, he should have been able to keep tabs on the mortal at all times. How did the kid always manage to do that? Oh right, Artemis raised him. The thought made Apollo scowl. He never admitted it aloud, but she was always so much better at hiding than he was at seeking. He needed to get her to key him into her nifty tracking device so that his slippery little nephew wouldn't disappear again. Apollo whipped his attention back around to the table of ruffians when someone let out a yell. He winced and grimaced before paling as a series of crashes started to make patrons duck for cover. The god groaned and clapped his hand onto his face. I'm going to have to erase so many memories. January 8, 2008. Naruto didn't stay in New York long after the year changed. After celebrating the new year with his mother and the hunt in Central Park, Uncle Fred took him back to his old apartment in Pennsylvania. Or, he tried to. The god of the sun was horrified to find the building condemned and abandoned, and frantically set about searching for a new home for him. He settled on renting a room at a hotel in Jersey City. It's temporary. Uncle Fred assured him once he dropped his bag on the bed. Give me a few weeks and I'll have something set up for you. Weeks. Naruto arched a brow, mildly surprised at the admission. He didn't really care how long it took, but to have a god say something as mundane as setting him up in an apartment would take more than a day was a bit odd. It would be faster, but Hermes is on his half-day schedule to recover from and prepare for the holidays. What holiday does he have to prepare for? Come on, lil nephew, don't act like you never celebrated Valen, right? Uncle Fred sighed at the annoyed look that crossed Naruto's face. The god closed his eyes, pinched the bridge of his nose, tilted his head forward and muttered something under his breath, before looking back at him. Look, just don't do anything stupid like leaving without telling me, okay? Okay. I mean it, Naruto. Okay. Naruto held his hands up to placate his, justifiably, upset uncle. As soon as I get a disposable phone. What? Oh, no. Nope, not happening. Uncle Fred grabbed his arm, guiding him to the door. Come on, we're getting you on the family plan and a razor today. It had been 2 days since, and Naruto's poorly stocked supplies were running low. Not unusual, since he'd preferred to live off the land, but being in the heart of Jersey City, the chances of that happening were slim to none. That meant it was time to hit the grocery store and use his dwindling stipend to top off the fridge. I should get a job. Naruto muttered to himself as he walked into the hotel lobby. He was getting sick of sitting around and waiting for anything about school from Uncle Fred, or his mother, or even Hermes himself. Checking the mail every morning, staring at his phone, watching TV, and rereading the same 5 comics could only entertain him for so long. We could always go find someone to kill. Yeah, we're definitely not gonna do that. Naruto deadpanned. Ever since he left New York, his tag-along had become quite vocal. He stepped out to the January chill and shivered. He popped his hood up and zipped up his jacket. Come on, fuzzball, there's gotta be something you like to eat. I gorge myself on human flesh. Uh-huh. Naruto drawled, pulling his Christmas gift from his mother closer around his face. A practical and warm scarf to replace the one he'd lost on the quest to save her. He felt an unnatural fury start to grow in the back of his neck and side. Work with me here. What do you like to eat that won't make me a cannibal? Why do you care what others think? The way I see it, we have the power. The fox chuckled. We can do whatever we want. Great theory, but let me put this in a way that you can understand, Naruto said, stopping at a curb and glaring at nothing in particular. I would sooner have Zeus atomize me than eat another human being, alive or not. TCH, Killjoy. The fox grumbled. A beat passed before it growled. Fine. Get noodles and broth. You have to give me more than that. The chance that he'd get the wrong noodles and screw their slowly growing dynamic up were too high. You're familiar with it, I'm sure. Those of your bloodline are addicted to, blast, what's it called? Ramen. Ramen. Naruto paused and subtly licked his lips. He'd liked the food ever since Uncle Fred had taken him to a small stand in Japan. His mother had put a magical limit on his body's possible intake of the meal after he gorged himself into a food coma with 17 instant meal cups when he was 9. Maybe that spell had worn off by now. Something to consider. It's cheap, full of sodium, but manageable in our current living situation. Nearest store is a few blocks east, I think. Good. Then, onward. We have a feast to prepare. Fox. This might be the start of a wonderful partnership. The longer you dawdle, the more likely I am to start eating your soul. Point taken. Naruto deadpanned and hurried himself along. Hugh-man was arguably the most unlucky human in America. How did he know and say this with such certainty? For starters, his name was a pun. He flunked out of college because his alarm clocks always seemed to go on the fritz. His car was stolen and recovered absolutely trashed the day before Christmas. And at the top of the list of cruel irony, his girlfriend left him for someone named Esther on New Year's Eve. If any gods out there exist, why do you hate me? Hugh asked the cosmos this often. Usually, it was met with silence. Sometimes, he could have sworn there was something laughing. To spite them, Hugh was determined to avoid being depressed by any legal means available to him. Consequently, he was such a diligent worker that he's been Employee of the Month at his job for 5 months straight. He was so good at managing his finances that his landlord Mr. Frisk had just given him a break on rent for a month. Most recently at a garage sale near his parents' home, he found and restored a fully functional scooter that got him from A to B at no cost to the environment. That was last weekend. And this week, we're going to keep turning the year around. Hugh thought to himself as the bell chimed. He straightened up behind his register and smiled at another customer that walked in, mouth opening to give them the traditional slogan greeting that seemed to be all the rage nowadays. Before Hugh could get the words out, he met the gaze of the hooded guy that entered. Cold blue eyes glanced out from beneath the gray NYC hoodie, while a thick white scarf covered the lower half of his face. His hands were tucked into his stained jacket's pockets, making the guy's broad frame appear just a bit bigger. His sneakers were covered in snow, and his jeans were partially frozen, giving off the appearance of someone who had just hiked from the other side of the state. Hugh faltered. Where's the ramen? Hugh almost jumped at the muffled timbre. When had he gotten up to the counter? Oh God, he had a piercing in his ear. Oh, great, he was getting flashbacks from junior high. Damn you, Parker Peterson. That swirly ruined his and Janice's budding romance. No, focus. Can't change the past. Focus on the present. Hugh snapped himself from his thoughts and pointed at aisle 4. Third shelf from the top, just before the hot dog buns. Cups or bags? Both. Thank you. The teen headed for the aisle in question, and Hugh made note to keep an eye on him. Then the bell rang. He prepared for another greeting, but the new customer was not a customer at all. Huggy. The greasy-haired man in a green Adidas tracksuit. He had a single chain around his neck, and attached to it was a cross. Behind him were two larger men who emulated his style. Both wore the same green Adidas tracksuit with white A-shirts underneath. One was bald, the other was not, and both were growing more hair on their chests than on their heads. Mr. Castiglione. Hugh swallowed, recognizing the man from his auto shop's online adverts. According to a few of his former classmates in his shop class, Castiglione was rumored to have been a made man in the 90s, fled New York during the mass convictions in 1999, and had since built his own little family in Jersey. But those were just rumors. Sure, he came to the store on the first Friday of every month, but that was just a coincidence, right? The owner and manager, Mr. Good, would usually speak with him in the back, but he had called in sick today. This guy. Mr. Castiglione looked at the two other guys with a grin before he leaned on the counter. It is the second Friday of the month, and you are just the guy the first wanted to speak to. I was worried it'd be that new guy, what's his face? The and. Dollar and percent asterisk that doesn't know anything. You mean Joel. Joel hadn't been seen since Friday. Yes. Him. He's an idiot. Mr. Castiglione laughed at his own joke, before grinning at Hugh. Hugh felt like he was thrown in the middle of the lion's cage at the zoo. Mr. Castiglione drummed his fingers on the counter before pointing at Hugh. But you're no dummy, and no sir. Mr. Castiglione grinned. He pushed away from the counter and said something to his friends in another language. Italian. No, Hugh couldn't assume. Assuming only made things worse. Mr. Castiglione turned back to him, grinning. I need my money this week. Money. Hugh blinked. Yeah, you know. The green and asterisk dollar percent we use to buy your dollar asterisk and percent. I need my cut this week. Call it an interest paid in advance. Mr. Castiglione smiled. I don't. Hugh swallowed. I can't do that, sir. Mr. Castiglione stopped smiling. He looked at his bald friend and flicked his hand toward the door. Hugh watched bald guy go to the door and flip the store hours sign around. Mr. Castiglione sighed, drawing his attention back. Oh, Huggy. Tell you what. I like you. He pulled something from his pocket and dropped it on the counter with a loud clatter. Hugh stared at it. He'd never seen a gun up close before. Here's what's going to happen. My friend Jonesy, the big guy with hair, cracked his knuckles. Is going to break your fingers. If I don't get my money after he breaks your fingers, I'm gonna shoot you in the leg. Deal. Excuse me, is there a self-checkout or do I have to wait in this line? Hugh, Mr. Castiglione, Johnsy and the bald guy all looked at hooded ramen guy. In his hands, filling 2 shopping baskets, were no less than 30 packages and 15 cups of ramen. Each. Who the and percent asterisk dollar are you? Mr. Castiglione asked. Hooded ramen guy blinked and lifted his baskets. A paying customer. He lowered his baskets and tilted his head. Who are you? The annoying reoccurring criminal stereotype, the sympathetic and sad criminal stereotype, or the so inept it's funny criminal stereotype. Mr. Castiglione turned beet red. Johnsy, snap this asterisk percent and dollar asterisk percent, neck. Hugh gasped and ducked down behind the counter to hide from the coming violence, only brave enough to peek over the edge. Johnsy reached out to grab hooded ramen guy by his jacket collar, and at the same time hooded ramen guy dropped his baskets to the ground. Hooded ramen guy grabbed the offending arm in both hands, jumped up, and dug his feet into Johnsy's stomach. Johnsy stumbled back and slammed back first into the counter while hooded ramen guy hit the ground. He rolled his legs up over his head and kipped up to his feet, arms raised at the ready for a fight like he had been studying kung fu all his life. Johnsy, cradling his stomach with one arm, pulled a revolver from his side with the other and cocked the hammer. Hooded Ramen guy disarmed him with a swift roundhouse kick, then with the same leg, kicked Johnsy in the jaw, ribs, and ended it with a jump spin kick that knocked him over the counter into the cigarette rack. The $$ kind of kung fu bullhockey is that? Mr. Castiglione asked, the bald guy staring incredulously at Hooded Ramen guy. Hooded Ramen guy glanced at them and shrugged. I'm enthusiastic about my hobbies. You smug little son of a. Mr. Castiglione reached for the gun he'd set on the counter. Hooded Ramen guy cut him off with a swift punch to the throat. Mr. Castiglione choked on his own words and stumbled back, tripping over the 5-hour energy display that took most of the early morning to put up. Mr. Castiglione wheezed and gagged, floundering around to look at Bald Guy. Bald Guy looked at Hooded Ramen Guy, then at Mr. Castiglione, at Hooded Ramen Guy, at the place where Johnsy landed, then at Hooded Ramen Guy once more. Then, without warning, he held his hands up, shook his head, and ran out of the store. He's smart. Hooded Ramen Guy grumbled as he walked over to the counter. He grabbed Mr. Castiglione's gun off the countertop and turned towards the not as scary businessman. His weapon-free hand balled into a fist and he tightened his grip on the gun. You're not. HRLGK. Looks like I was wrong on all accounts. You're the stupid criminal stereotype. Pity. He cracked his neck and stalked towards him. A slow, measured gait, like a wolf or a tiger stalking its prey. Those guys usually don't make it to a hospital. Hugh may or may not have wet himself after that line. Kale. Krelg. Mr. Castiglione wheezed, rubbed at his neck and scrambled away from him. Hooded Ramen Guy tilted his head and let out a contemplative hum as he watched the man falter to push open the pull-only door. Fair point. He flipped the gun around to hold it by the barrel. But he said he wanted to break fingers, so let's start there. What followed was a beating that Hugh would never forget for the rest of his life. By the time Hooded Ramen Guy finished, Mr. Castiglione's face looked like an uncooked slab of ground beef and his fingers looked more like limp noodles than appendages. Dark red splotches stained Mr. Castiglione's jumpsuit, and the crotch portion of his pants had become darker in color. After he was done, Hooded Ramen Guy pulled the magazine from the gun and dropped both in the trash can by the exit. Calmly, he walked back over to the baskets he'd dropped, gathered the ramen packets that fell out and put them back in. After picking both baskets up, he walked up to the counter and looked at Hugh. See, can I help you? I'd like to buy these. He set the baskets on the counter. Hugh looked at him, stared more likely. Hooded Ramen Guy stared back, his eyes not cold or angry. Just impassive. Take 'em. I'm not stealing. I'm buying them. Hugh yelped when his eyes flickered red for a second, before going back to blue. Hooded Ramen Guy blinked a few times. Sorry. Can you just ring me out before the police show up? I need to get home before my uncle comes looking for me. Police. You did call them right. While Hugh stared blankly, Hooded Ramen Guy sighed. The silent alarm should have been tripped as soon as the gun hit the counter. Silent alarm. Hugh blinked and then crouched down to look under the counter. Sure enough, there was a button under the counter. He pressed it, stood back up, and then started ringing up Hooded Ramen Guy's ramen. After cashing out the total, he gave Hooded Ramen Guy his receipt. Have a good day. Hugh smiled. Hooded Ramen Guy snorted. Funny. Yes, it was. What? Take care. Hooded Ramen Guy left the store, being sure to step on Mr. Castiglione's gut as he left. Hugh leaned on the counter and waved at his back. He smiled and blinked a few times, then slumped back in a dead faint. Cook faster. I can't make water boil. Naruto sighed as he leaned against the wall and half-watched the pot on the electric stove out of the corner of his eye. The rest of his attention was dedicated to the television in the main room, the news on the screen but the volume muted. He tilted his head as he read the caption. Hooded assailant puts local businessman in hospital. Weird, that's not how I remember it. It's boiling. Hurry, add the noodles. No, it's not. And we'd still have 3 minutes. Ah. You are evil, I knew I liked you. Much more than that red-haired bitch. What? Naruto looked at the skull on his arm sharply. It was the image the fox liked to speak to him through the most. He frowned when it grumbled something unintelligible under its breath and kept its gaze averted. He looked back at the pot and crossed his arms. Fine, be stubborn. 3 loud knocks came at the door. Naruto wasn't expecting anyone, which probably meant either local law enforcement were at the door, or a god was visiting him. Rare, but knowing his luck, not unheard of. It wasn't Uncle Fred, he didn't knock, he just entered, usually loudly and with obnoxious fanfare. His mother would have made him come outside. Kansu would have just appeared in the room. It's open, come on in. He called. If they were a god, they would stay outside until he opened the door for them. If they were law enforcement, they would do the same because of legal ramifications. If it was something else, they would come in. In all scenarios, he could focus on what he was doing and pretend they weren't there, and the slim chance that they'd go away might come to fruition. His eyes went back to the pot, and he didn't fight the smile from spreading across his face when steam started to rise from it. Good news, Fox. The water's ready. Yes. The door, and half of the hotel room with it, exploded with bullets. The television ate a good dozen, the bed ate twice as much. Naruto himself was struck at least once in each limb. The only place where he wasn't hit were the vitals in his chest. Worst of all, the pot was knocked off the stove by stray gunfire, and the freshly boiled water spilled all across the floor. No. The fox snarled. They must die. You know what? Naruto felt the fox's energy bubble and healed the damage to his body and got up off the ground once the shooting stopped. He sat up, glaring daggers at the various goons in tracksuits that he could see through the bullet holes in the wall. He reached up to the earring cuff on his left ear and pinched it. In a flash of white light, his axe from Ares appeared and he brandished it. For once, we agree. Naruto got to his feet, charged the shot-up door and barreled through its shoulder first, shoving the gunman on the other side into the opposite hotel room's door. The gunman, the same bald man who'd escaped the general store assault earlier, screamed as the doorknob drove into his back. Naruto's left arm hefted his axe up and brought it down to split the screaming gunman's skull. He pried his axe from the dead man, and let his body slump to the ground, a trail of red marring the pristine white hallway. 7 more tracksuits stood in the hall, 5 of them frantically reloading archaic guns. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Their features shifted as they grew to 8 feet in height and became larger in size. Men and ogres. Naruto frowned. I'm not sure which is worse. Who cares what they are? Rip them to shreds. Don't have to tell me twice. Naruto threw himself at the next man with a primal yell. His weight brought the large criminal thug to the ground and he lifted his axe up. A gunshot rang out and his raised arm felt lighter. Looking up, he saw a hole and 2 fingers missing, the shot not only tearing them off but also knocking the hatchet out of his grasp. He glared at the shooter before looking down at the man he'd tackled. He grimaced as his fingers and hand grew back, but balled them into a fist and drove it through the man's face and the floor beneath it. Naruto stared, dumbfounded at what he'd just done to a human skull. You're welcome. The fox grumbled. Now kill the rest. Holy and $. Did you see that? Kill that freak, An ogre shouted. For Polly. Naruto was tackled off of the mash-faced corpse by an ogre and carried through the ruined wall back into his hotel room and driven back first into the folding closet door. Instead of flailing to get out, he wrapped one arm around the back of his assailant's head and grabbed under the monster's arm with the other. A tight pull on his part was followed by a jerk and a loud crunch. He rose to his feet as the dust fluttered away. Blue eyes glared at the others staring at him in the hallway. Rip them apart. His hand raised. The axe he was disarmed of earlier flew through the neck of one ogre, ridding it of the 10-pound weight that sat between its shoulders, and landed in his outstretched hand. He closed his eyes, rolled his neck and let his red eyes snap open. Gladly. Chaos ensued. January 9, 2008. I'll admit it, I hadn't expected to find you here of all places. A bearded blonde man with a crooked chin chuckled as he stared at the teen sitting in a holding cell. He was glad his young ward hadn't stopped practicing his combat skills. When word of the attack on a hotel reached his ears, he set out to learn more about it and bring some much-needed peace to the community. He was surprised to see the boy get put into a police car and taken away. The lad was a fine warrior and word had spread of the injustice done to him by the Olympians, All-Father. The series of misfortunes must be consequences of some Greek curse bestowed upon him. Seeing as he was all but fending for himself, Frere decided to post his bond and make him an offer. Nice to see you too, Alf. Naruto drawled, his arms crossed. Frere chuckled and tucked his hands into his pockets. Do you greet every god with such glib in your words? Only those I like. Despite their surroundings, Frere barked out a laugh. He ignored the mortal law officers that stared at him oddly and walked through the bars that contained his wayward student as if they were liquid. The men would forget what they saw before it even registered. He sat down beside the younger blonde and rested his arms on his knees. Before I get to my purpose for finding you, I must apologize for my abrupt departure. There was something I had to be present for, and I know that when I did so, I left you vulnerable. Frey looked at the boy's arm. His train of thought derailed and he glanced warily at the boy. Care to explain why you proudly display the images of Hattie and Skoll? Apparently, I died. Quote. No Valkyrie would mark you with those images, boy. They didn't. After you vanished, I was attacked by a giant fox that was hiding between the realms and used runes to stop it. Those runes appeared on my arm. Naruto gestured to the markings that still resembled the Norse written language on his forearm. A month ago, I was shot. Bled out and died. It cut me a deal, brought me back, and afterwards the skin on my arm burnt off. It reformed with these two on it. Interesting. Frere mused, rubbing his bearded chin. Does it use their images to speak to you? Skoll's image is its favorite. Ah. Mockery. Figures a fox would go for that. Frere nodded. He sighed. I'm afraid you've been marked by Fenrir. Because of course I was. Naruto groaned and let his head fall back to rest against the railings. His right hand lifted and rubbed his temples. I just wanted to shut it up for a little bit. You could have just eaten the bodies, boy. Frere snapped his eyes down to the Skoll image. He narrowed his eyes. Skoll's did the same. So the beast speaks. And percent in $* you, too, Blondie. Don't pick a fight I can't win. The teen glared at his arm and then scowled at Frere. What do you mean Fenrir marked me? Hattie and Skoll are to be the ones to eat Sol and Mani when Ragnarok comes, and are the children of Fenrir. Their pursuit of their quarry is too much for them to turn away and give mortals any attention, which rules them out as the cause for this mark, Frere said, his arms crossed in thought. The Fenris wolf may have marked you as a potential pawn or as prey. That overgrown mutt proves no threat to me. The fox assured with a growl. Frere stroked his beard again. Perhaps. He admitted. Many times, a cunning wolf has been outwitted by a lucky fox. The one who knows best of Fenrir, outside of Loki and Odin, would be Tyr. Lucky me. Another god of war. Naruto drawled. Frere flicked the side of his head. Ow. Pay your respects to the one that gave you the bone steel axe. Ares gave me this axe. Did he? Frere arched a brow. And the son of Zeus is known for giving powerful weapons away. Well, no, but. And the Olympians are known for making weapons that return at will. Poseidon's. And the blood of their enemies often empowers their weapons. Okay, you've made your point. Naruto relented with a frown. Maybe it wasn't Ares. But if it was Tyr, why not show himself to me? We don't like to stick our noses in the business of others if we don't have to. Frere shrugged. And Tyr has always been a strange one. He willingly stuck his hand in the Fenris wolf's jaws and became a minor god of war when Thor started to show better promise over the domain. I have no words. Naruto mumbled, brow furrowed in thought. Frere grinned and clapped a hand on his shoulder. Then let's have enough of this glumness. You appear in a bit of trouble, want me to help you out for old time's sake. Just tell me what you want, Alf. The boy sighed. Frere chuckled again. Sorry, lad. Sometimes I forget that you've dealt with more immortals than most mortals recognize. Onto my original purpose for seeking you out, Frere said, getting to his feet and sticking his hands in his pockets. There's an opening available at a hotel in Boston I know of. Paid living, food, meals, and the insurance is immeasurable. I think you'd be perfect for the position. Hold on. Back up. Naruto lifted a hand and raised an eyebrow at him. You're telling me that you came here, to a mortal police station, to offer me a job. I was going to offer it to you regardless of where you were. Frere shrugged. The mortal gained a pensive look on his face before meeting the god's eyes again. What would I be doing? You'd be a lifeguard. That's it. The disbelief made Frere frown. A challenging brow arched. What, was the rodeo clown position filled? Of course, you'd bring that up, Frere sighed. I apologized for that already, haven't I? Laughing, yeah. Naruto scowled. Not for actually signing me up to be one without telling me. It worked out in your favor, didn't it? Yeah, I couldn't use my left leg for a week. Great times, Naruto grumbled. Frere sheepishly rubbed the back of his neck. He may have had his sister help speed along the boy's healing with magic. Could be worse, I guess. It could have felt like my insides were burning from the inside out. I didn't hear you complaining when I restarted your heart. Cold Blues glanced at the artistic representation of Skoll. You're not involved in this conversation, Fox. I feel pretty involved whenever you take a shot at me for reviving you. The beast huffed. Be glad my comments have been mostly kept to myself, human. Selene, Helios, Cthulhu and Primus. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose and scowled. Frere did his best not to chuckle at the invocation. That one addition always made up for the other because of its ridiculousness. Alas, he needed an answer before the other immortals watching the boy sought him out. Well lad, what do you say? Sure. Fine. Whatever. Naruto sighed, dropping his hand to his lap. I just need to make a call first. January 10, 2008. Sorry I missed your call, lil nephew. I was in a very important meeting. The words died on Apollo's lips as he appeared in the middle of his nephew's hotel room. Bullet holes, blood stains, and chalk outlines marred the hotel floor. The television was knocked down and had a numbered card in front of it. Apollo took all of this in and nodded. Okay. Don't panic. Maybe that's what his phone call was about. The god pulled his cell phone out and listened to the last message. Got a job in Boston. Sorry about the hotel room. Later, Uncle Fred. That boy is maddeningly unhelpful when it matters. Apollo mumbled, staring at his phone incredulously. One word stuck out to him and he gaped. Boston. Did he say Boston? He tried calling his nephew back immediately and started pacing when every call sent him to voicemail. Come on, Naruto, pick up the damn phone. Why do you have to make things so difficult for your Uncle Fred? All you had to do was sit tight for a few weeks. Arg, why doesn't he just listen to M? Mid-step, he almost tripped over something. Looking down, he found a silver circlet under his sandal. He picked it up, stared at it for a moment and then paled drastically, to the point that his flawless skin lost its subtle golden hue. I lost him again, he mumbled. The circlet dropped to the ground with a clatter and he slumped against the wall, rubbing his face with a groan. Artemis is going to mount my head on her temple wall. To be continued.